We are back for episode 3.
Yeah, man.
Episode 3. We got it going. All right, we're on
Numero tres.
the magic number 3. We are rocking the Ain't Done Yet podcast with Ryan Patrick and Johnny Biz. We are very excited for our next guest, one of our very good friends here in Las Vegas. And we're just very, very excited. The way we met and the friendship that we've had and what he's doing in the community and what he's done with himself as a human being on this planet is remarkable. We would like to introduce Dr. Nitin Engineer. Thank you for coming to hang out with us, brother.
What's up,
Thanks
man?
for having me. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming. We're excited to have you here, man.
Fantastic facility, fantastic friends.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we go back a long ways, man, more than a decade. So
yeah, it's a good
nice culmination of everything. I just celebrated 15 years in this city, and it's the longest I've ever lived anywhere. So
that's amazing.
I got to tell you, man, I'm officially a Las Vegas.
Yesterday? Day before yesterday?
3 days ago. Yeah.
3 days ago.
2009 is when I moved here.
Wow. Well, I was reading a little bit about your history, and I know that you were in Las Vegas. You had offices here. You decided to go back for some studies, right? You wanted to be a better doctor than you are now. So you closed your business down. You left, went to Louisville, I believe, did some more studies, got smarter, as I don't know if you could be any smarter because you're another one of those smart cats that we know. And did some more studies. And I want to say that was like 10 years or something. Why don't you talk to us about that a little bit?
Well, I think it really comes down to 2 words: no regrets, Yeah. And when I was a young kid, I was 17. I was working in the operating room as an anesthesia tech. It's a pretty early time to start in the medical career. And I fell in love with hand surgery. And I knew that if I were to pursue a career in medicine, hand surgery was going to be a big part of that. To be a hand surgeon, there's 3 different routes. You can be a general surgeon, you can be an orthopedic surgeon, or a plastic surgeon. You need some sort of core study. And I, through that research and trying to figure out how you're going to do anything, just like, learning to play a chord or learning to play a song, whatever it may be, you got to figure out what the root of that is. And the root for any type of specialty is to have some sort of core knowledge. And, I chose plastic surgery. Initially, I didn't get that opportunity because it's a pretty competitive field. So I ended up taking the general surgery route. And
when you say competitive field, is that something like you're going, I want to go to school for this? And they're like, I'm sorry, we're full.
Yeah.
That's how it works.
Yeah. When I applied for plastic surgery, there were 77 spots for probably about 1,000 applicants. So you can imagine.
Wow.
At the time, my mentor told me it's like, imagine 1,000 birds trying to fly through a tiny little hole. And there's only 77 that are going to make it through. And I didn't.
It's almost like, that's how college goes, right? My daughters and my nieces were all applying for colleges. And my brother-in-law is like, look, you got to apply for 1,000 to get 10 opportunities, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's all about perseverance. And, it's very kind of you to say that I'm, smart and all this, but it's not really so much that as I'm just a scrapper. I'd really say that, and that's a motto in our office: never tell me no. Never tell me I can't do something.
Love it.
Because, I'll make it happen. And, at the time,
Did somebody tell you that at one point? Like, you're never going to be a doctor, Nitin?
Nobody ever told me that. But I did have a lot of people that made it difficult for me. And there was a lot of resistance along the way that, at some point in your life, you meet the mentor of your life. And for me, the mentor of my life is a guy named Dr. Brad Wilhelmi. And I met him when I was in general surgery. I ended up taking the general surgery route since I didn't get the plastic surgery route. And when I was in my 3rd year of residency as a general surgeon, I met him while I was doing my burn rotation. And I knew he was the hand fellowship director at the time too. And he's this big, tall, handsome, intimidating guy. And I walked up to him. I was like, listen, this is something that I've always wanted to do. Always wanted to be a hand surgeon. How do I do it? And I would like to set aside some office hours so I can just come by and pick your brain. Instead of doing that, he went to the copy machine, picked up a piece of paper off the copy machine, and he started just basically designing the rest of my life right there in front of me.
No kidding.
And when
He gave you all the steps.
He gave me the steps, and he became my mentor.
He's your Yoda.
He's my Yoda.
He's your Yoda.
Yeah.
He gave me 3 jobs in 13 years. And I said that when I graduated from plastics as well. So initially he gave me my hand fellowship. So I ended up training in hand at SIU. During that time period, he became the chairman of plastic surgery at the University of Louisville. But then he gave me my second job. So I joined him as a partner in hand surgery there. And then I was going to stay there and train in plastics. But then I had a great job opportunity out here in Las Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
Was that for another doctor, another hospital?
It was another practice.
Another practice.
Another
okay.
large corporate practice. And it was going to be doing hand surgery. And it was everything I ever wanted to do. So I thought to myself, why should I pursue something else that I don't want to, concentrate on when my true love was hand surgery at the time?
Mm-hmm.
And then I came out here, worked, I was in that practice for about 4.5 years, and it went under. It was mismanaged.
Okay.
And so that forced me to go out and start my own practice. And that was in 2013. I started my own practice.
Okay.
Took a couple of the staff members, and we started. And one of the staff members, Daniel, who's now my office manager, we've been together for 15 years. And
Awesome.
That's awesome.
I mean, that's the kind of loyalty that we have.
Sure.
We started that practice, and then my mentor, Dr. Wilhelmi, called me in 2016, and he said, listen, somebody dropped out of the plastics program. I know you've always wanted to do plastics. I have an opportunity for you. So it took me a couple of days to really deliberate on that. And I ended up shutting down my practice, going back to Louisville in 2016 to 2019. Trained with my mentor, greatest mentor. That was the third job, right?
Well, let me just back up a little bit, because that had to be a huge undertaking to shut down a business. I'm assuming you have a lot of clients, a lot of, you've done a lot of advertising, a lot of marketing, all of those kind of things for this business, right? You've got leases that I'm assuming you had, and everything else that you had to, shut down, renegotiate, et cetera. How much of an undertaking was that? What did it take to get all of that stuff accomplished? And how long did it take for you to get back to go back to school?
Well, I think it's fair to say when you put your balls out on the table, that's truly what you're doing.
Yeah.
And it was frightening. I was fortunate to have a great support system, great staff that said, Doc, you got to do what you got to do. And I've always been an advocate for education, advocate for anybody that wants to, move themselves to the next level. And so they did that for me. In fact, my office manager, Daniel, who's still with me, packed up the whole office. While I went back to Louisville for 6 weeks, we still ran kind of the office from afar. Packed up my whole office, moved it into my house. I kept my house here. I would come back once a month just to check on things. Wow. Kept a relationship with him. He ended up going back to school. He got 2 degrees. Probably is one of the smartest people I've ever met.
Wow.
And when I came back, I said, I have this dream to reopen a practice, but expand it just beyond hand surgery. It includes plastic, reconstructive, and hand surgery. And I got to train with my mentor. I mean, it's a dream come true. Most people don't get one opportunity to do plastic surgery. I had 2 opportunities. Lightning struck twice. So I don't know what your religious beliefs are, whatever it may be, but the Great Spirit in the sky at some point looked down upon me and said, this was your calling. And that's what I did.
So awesome.
Yeah.
And during that time,
I love that. I was literally about to ask you, how did you have that divine, what can you credit that divine direction or instruction? Where did it come from? And you're just answering it. So I love that.
Yeah. It's sometimes there's a calling within you. And when your mentor calls you and gives you 3 jobs in 13 years, and then, my father, you never met my mother. My mother was so driven. She died in 2016, shortly before I got this opportunity. But my dad, who's 92, he said, you do.
He's 92.
He's 92.
Wow.
92. And I moved him here to Las Vegas.
Nitin is actually the second most sharply dressed man in Las Vegas.
His
dad is the first.
He's on top of it. Huh?
I stole it all from my dad. Yeah. No, he's a pretty extraordinary human being. He speaks 5 languages. If you think about Yoda, he actually looks like Yoda.
He's the Indian Yoda.
And some of the most cherished moments that I've had is celebrating time with Ryan's family. Ryan and Adrian, his mom and his dad have come over to the house. We used to do these family dinners, and one of my most cherished moments is when my dad was cooking with your mom.
Yeah.
And it was just, you're talking about like true heartwarming experiences they're burned in your neurons, and you can't.
Yeah, his family's the best.
They're the best.
His parents are just the most inviting, most comfortable people to be around. I can't say enough about them.
Absolutely.
Sure, Mama B, just love her to death.
Yeah.
And I just saw them, at Mountain's Edge. I stood next to them in the crowd, and they come up to me and like, "Hello, son. How are you doing, son?" This. And everybody asked me, what's the best Indian restaurant in town?
Mama B's house. That's damn 100%. Right too. And I'm a huge fan of Indian food. And we used to go to India Palace for lunch. They'd have a buffet at India Palace, and I mean, it's one of the best, right? But then you have Mama B's stuff, and it's like it's all over.
There's nothing.
I will have to say, a dream. Talk about it. One of these days, we grab 1 or 2 of these cameras, set them up at your kitchen.
Yes.
And I've wanted to, since we had that summer evening where Nitin's father and our mom were cooking Indian food together. Mm-hmm. We're like, this is the perfect setting. Like, cookbook, but let's just like, Mom, okay, action, show us. Show us the magic. You know what I mean? And so we got to do that. Please,
and truly is magic. Yeah, absolutely. It would be a great thing. And, I wanted to kind of start creating this thing at the home as well, called a supper club, where you just invite like 12 to 14 of your best friends, and you just rotate, and there's a different theme.
Love that idea.
And, the Life by Music board meeting, our first ever board meeting. Thankfully, Mr. Nitin Engineer hosted it. So that was like the start of let's test this bad boy out.
Absolutely,
let's get it rocking.
And we've got I grew up playing the drums. Not as good as I used to be, but still I enjoy it. Ryan here is trying to teach me to play the guitar. My discipline has been really,
it's all right.
It's off, but nevertheless, if we get
there, we're rocking.
Amazingly talented people over to the house. You have a nice supper club. You have Mama B, cook, and then we just get together and have like little jam sessions like they used to do back in the 60s and 70s. And
you talk about the Hollywood Hills, in LA, and my brother-in-law, my sister, they bought a house out there, and they went into the basement of this house, which was reset to another bedroom. Mm-hmm. But when you took down these pieces, and they kind of redid the entire house, but when they took down these pieces, there was an entire recording studio that used to be in the basement of this place. And there's a documentary on Netflix. I can't remember what it's called, but it's all about that. What's that main road that goes up?
Is it Cahuenga?
No, not Cahuenga. It's
Mulholland. Not.
No, well, they lived on the backside of their house was Mulholland Drive, but the main road that went up to their house.
Topanga Canyon.
No, that's over
way
off
out?
of. That's way out. That's over off of in Malibu on the other side of Pacific Palisades. Mm-hmm. But in any event, there is a documentary out there, and it talks about all the musicians who lived in this area, and they would record together. And that was one of the recording studios in that basement that everybody used to go to record at, all the way down back in the 70s, the Doors and all
the Doors.
This.
Yeah.
Correct.
I'm a big Doors fan.
So insane.
The intention of the supper club at Casa de Engineer is similar to our intention with the Ain't Done Yet podcast of like, hey, let's get together with people that we love and admire and respect, and let's have a beautiful conversation, and get to know each other better. I told you, I said, when you called me, you're like, hey, what are we talking about? I'm there. I'm like, it's going to be a great conversation. It's heartfelt, but also I'm going to learn things about you that we hang out almost weekly.
Yes.
And I'm going to learn something about you that I didn't know. And literally within the first 2 minutes, I have now learned more about you. I mean, that's such a cool hero story. That's like the Mr. Miyagi, that's like Daniel-san, with your mentor, for him to give you that. And the risks that you took professionally to, you know what? Okay, I'm going to go to Louisville. Like that was a lot. And then you came back and kicked ass, that's amazing.
That was the big challenge because I remember the day when there was a big medical legal social event, and I went around and I was telling everybody that I'm leaving, and they were just shocked. And I'm like, what do you mean you're leaving? Your practice is just taking off. And I was like, well, I have this opportunity. And they never thought I'd come back.
Yeah.
And I told them, I'm in love with this city. I'm in love with Las Vegas. I'm in love with Henderson. I love the people here, the friendships that I made. It's a little big city, and it's people that really support you and lift you up. And whatever adventure, whatever endeavor you have, they're going to be there for you. The real, genuine people are going to be there for you.
Right.
And I'm sitting here with you guys for that very same reason. You know, I mean, our friendship goes back more than 10 years. We were looking back at the first time that I actually met your brother.
Yeah. Let's talk about that. Our first guest, Mr. Adrian Patrick, was here, and we could do a whole year's worth of wise stories and shenanigans. And, I just came from a rooftop party at Red Rock, and I was standing at the very, very top suite of the Red Rock that handful of years ago, my brother was just so happily and casually on the over the railing on the like, it's not even the part of the hotel. Like, this is off the hotel. You're standing on it and telling a story at the top of your lungs to everybody who's like, dude, come back. And then he's just standing up
like
there.
Literally, you would fall 35 stories.
Yeah.
You were to fall.
We're talking about a Morrison type of action here. This is a Jim Morrison kind of.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, he is a modern day Jim Morrison. This guy, and if I've always told him, man,
that's what he gets. He went and smoked a joint on Morrison's grave, back in 2001. I think it was even maybe before he really got into music. Man, now this connection. But he did that. He's like, I got to do it, and he did it, and then he came back, and he's just absolute riot.
He was talking about that, I think, on the show, that he went to Paris and did that, right?
Yeah.
I didn't know Jim Morrison was
Père Lachaise. I've been there.
Okay,
actually,
great.
Yeah,
on multiple occasions. It is actually so. Paris is.
Well, you learned. I read that you learned French too. That you were majoring in French, right? When you.
Let's keep going on the beauty of you, and then we will get to how my brother's wild nature and how it led us all together. So,
well, I think it's I think it's a nice, confluent relationship here, that your brother has that inspiration of Jim Morrison, who for me is probably one of the best rock stars that ever lived.
Yeah.
And I've been to his grave on multiple occasions. I did major in French, and I lived in the south of France. I studied abroad, did a couple of semesters there. I worked in Paris and spent a summer in Paris. And then I also worked in Mulhouse, and, and France has a very special place in my heart. And, honestly, I was just there last year for a friend's wedding, and I realized that maybe this is where I will probably end my life. The rest of my life, I'll retire here, and it's just
you'll ride off into a Parisian sunset.
Oh, it's beautiful. Paris is beautiful. It's a beautiful city, but there's a lot of inspiration in that cemetery alone. There's Chopin.
Wow.
There's some really impressive people that have been buried in that place.
Yeah.
And Jim Morrison is just the smallest of all the graves that are there, and
I'm sure there's stuff.
So there's a ton of other famous people that are buried in the same location. Then.
Oh, it's probably one of the most famous famous graves of of all time.
No kidding.
And it's a beautiful experience when you go through there, because it's funny how some of the graves themselves have been vandalized to say Jim this way, Jim that way,
Really?
Jim this way. And when you get to Jim Morrison's grave, it's a tiny little
Just
plot.
a little headstone.
Tiny little plot. The headstone's been stolen. It's gone.
Kidding.
Of course. Yeah.
Wow.
And,
How long has that been? Do you know?
Oh, it's been years. So I've actually never got to see the headstone myself. The first time I went to Paris was in, I want to say it's probably 90, 91 or so. You know, right before I graduated high school, we did a tour over there, and the headstone was already gone.
No kidding.
But nevertheless, you know, people go there as a pilgrimage. One of my most extraordinary experiences, I told you my favorite band's a band called The Cult.
Yeah.
The lead singer of the band is Ian Astbury.
Mm-hmm.
He joined up with members of the Doors, and they called themselves the Doors of the 21st Century. So on Jim Morrison's 60th birthday, I actually got to see the Doors play with Ian Astbury as the lead singer in Paris.
That's awesome. Was Krieger there and everything else too?
Well, so Krieger was there. It was Manzarek.
Mhm.
Obviously, Densmore was not there. I think they were having some
Battles.
some battles. So they were actually going to get Stuart Copeland, drummer for the Police, but then he ended up playing with them
I
later.
got his signature out there in the hall.
He's one of my favorites too. I mean, one of the
he's
greatest
awesome.
drummers.
Have you
one of
ever
the
seen the
greatest,
picture of my brother and I talking to Robbie Krieger
No,
at NAMM?
Come
JB,
on.
Yeah.
you took that
Oh
picture,
yeah, I took
bro.
that picture. That's cool.
Come on.
So he was.
Oh,
I
yeah.
know. I don't
He
know.
just happened to be in the back of the Gibson booth, right?
because he plays
he-
the SG.
Well,
He
they
loves his
were
little-
all playing. They were all playing, and he was also playing and going out and signing autographs and stuff like that. And we just happened to be in the same spot at the same time. I about passed the hell out.
That's heroic.
He had a guitar on too in the
He did
picture.
have a
It's
guitar.
me and my brother just stand, and he's got a guitar
Come
around his
on.
neck,
yeah.
and we're just talking to him.
Yeah.
You know? Well,
That's
how wild was
super,
that?
super sick.
Yeah.
You know, I wrote so I took a class in college. It was on American music, and I wrote my thesis on the Doors. And it
Yeah.
was a 34-page thesis.
Wow.
That and I coordinated. This is back in the days of cassettes. This tells you how old I am. So I actually had it such that I would, you know, in parts of the paper, I would say, now cue song number this, because there's so much Indian influence, Spanish influence,
That's
Spanish
awesome.
guitar. You know, I mean, you know, the end is essentially, you know, an Indian raga. You know, when you really think about it, and if you think about Indian music, and my dad, you know, being a huge Indian music connoisseur, I got that influence growing up.
Yeah.
And, you know,
Great.
stars and Robbie Krieger was just a genius at picking up at all of that, the flamenco
Yeah.
guitar. And you know more than
Yeah.
anything, but
That would be a really cool piece to have up at your house of like the cassette and your thesis.
Yeah.
yeah, the
How cool
cassette's
would that
gone.
be,
That went to
man?
the professor, but I do have the thesis.
That would be so cool to have it like
Yeah.
available, you know?
yeah,
That would be
it's a really,
badass.
yeah, it's cool.
So we had the chance to meet. It's so funny the balance of life, the dichotomy of life. You know, through my brother has violence and romance. You know, so much of our band and everything we're about. You know, our artistry has come from that kind of an ethos, that balance between the two.
Mhm.
And you know, it's brought some of the most amazing people into our lives, like you. So essentially, you know, I don't give the story justice because I wasn't there, but I have you as a resource, and my brother. Essentially, my brother was at a nightclub. We won't say the name of it or the time or the place, and you know, some guy was pushing him, and he was bumping into his girlfriend at the time, who was now his wife. It was like one of the first or second times she had come to visit Las Vegas from New York. And it's like, hey, I'll take you out to the club. And they're leaving, and this guy keeps pushing my brother. It's like, hey, man, relax. And then he pushes my brother really hard, and my brother hits Katie's head. And, you know, it's like, don't poke a wild animal, you know. Too many times and so
Gonna bite.
He's in the red.
my brother
in the red.
Yeah, he turns around and he lays one right on this guy,
Mhm.
and it hits him and a fight ensues. Whatever. My brother goes unscathed with just this big old dent in his knuckle, and turns out. So the next morning, it's not the first time he's been. From our conversation, things he's been through in Las Vegas, he's broken down a lot of doors, physically and metaphorically. And I've kind of been the one to watch back and be like, holy shit. But again, this is one of those times where the next morning he wakes up and his hand is swollen, not from pain but it's like, oh, something strange is going on here. And essentially it was something called fight bite.
Yeah. Essentially what ends up happening is in these fights, you end up, punching somebody in the face and their tooth penetrates the skin and it gets down into what's called the tendon sheath, right? And that tendon sheath is a very, very isolated, protected, sacred area of our hand, right? And if you get bacteria in there, then the bacteria love that environment because it's rich, full of synovial fluid and blood supply, et cetera, and pretty much proliferates into an infection.
Yeah.
And it turns into an abscess and it can get infected really quickly. And then that can spread because there's all these compartments are somehow connected, right? And without going into the details of anatomy. So
no, I'm loving that right now.
Yeah. It's like,
just understanding it. Yeah. It's really cool.
We call them bursa. We call it, they're different compartments, right? So we've got the extensor compartments, we've got the flexor compartments and so on. Flexors are what allows you to make a fist. Extensors are what allow you to extend your hand. But, when you hit that, there are different parts, and if you look at the knuckle, what's the most prominent knuckle? It's going to be your middle finger. And that's where he had the fight bite, where the tooth had probably gotten into that area, and the mouth is a dirty place. It's full of bacteria.
Yeah.
And so
was it bleeding when that happened? Did it break skin and all of those
No, it was
things,
more of just, it was just like cut open and then became infected.
Okay.
And so then he looked up, there we go.
There you go.
Yeah, there we go.
There you go.
Injury.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's a perfect example.
Just
that's a
like
fight
him
bite,
too. Is that the picture of the guy my brother hit?
He looks like a clown.
So the simplicity of my brother and the beauty of him, he looks in the phone book, which there's still phone. Maybe it was online, his phone book online around the time where phone books were becoming extinct. But he looks up Brown Hand Institute. And he must have looked at his hand and he's like, brown hand. So he just went to the Brown Hand Institute. And, he goes there and he didn't have insurance. He didn't have anything. I mean, we were just on tour all the time. Like,
right.
We had just met.
Rock stars don't need insurance.
What's insurance? What's taxes? What's life? Like we don't,
I got some bus keys and a guitar.
Yeah. And a bottle of Jack,
Right.
And 3 chords and the truth.
Yeah.
Man.
So he ends up there and like, oh, you need to get worked out. He doesn't have insurance. He's all like down and out. And correct me if I'm wrong with how it goes, but essentially you walked in and you're just like,
I mean, the story better than I do.
Yeah,
this is great.
You gotta, this is the thing with my brother, Adrian Patrick, and otherwise, like I'm his biggest fan. That's why I'm his guitar player.
Right. And
that's why I don't have another lead singer. Like I've been offered many gigs and we're going on a slight tangent, but I'm like, nah, I have one lead singer. You know what I'm saying? Either I'm singing or he's singing. That's it. But yeah, so I am his biggest fan. So I will say, you come in and you're like, that hand needs to be worked on right now. I don't care if you don't have insurance. I'm taking care of it. And you essentially got him on the operating table and saved his hand. What would have happened if you wouldn't have been there at that moment, that day, and he just went like, what would have happened to his hand?
So that's, by the way, I think we should pull up a picture that I took of you guys at the mountain's edge to show you the connection that these guys have. And I got the shot that shows exactly what this brotherhood is.
Oh yeah, that's Yeah, that's without a doubt. And you
But-
see that every night on stage. Anytime they're playing, you just
The
see
energy
that.
is it's electric.
It really is.
And
man.
you know,
100%.
I told you, you know, he's my Billy Duffy is my second favorite guitar player.
Right.
That's my first, yeah. But nevertheless, so what can happen? And I told you is compartments, right? So they're all channels,
Right.
and everything's sealed in like these little bursts, so the infection can actually travel up.
This one, right?
Yeah, show them the black and white one. That one was
Okay,
great.
yeah.
That shows you the love that these guys have for each other. I mean, it's tremendous. But yeah, it can travel up, and then once the bacteria seeds into the bloodstream, you can actually get circulated throughout the body. You can get septic. You can end up, you end up with an abscess. You end up with, you know, anything from limitation of range of motion, stiffness.
And a lot of pain. Because these abscesses can grow and grow and grow, and I mean, you can.
Is it specifically from a mouth bite? Then
not necessarily. It can be from anything.
Just bacteria.
Any type of penetrating injury. It can be a dog bite. It could be a burn. It could be any type of traumatic incident that happens to the hand.
Yeah.
And
you saved him, bro. You literally saved him. Like that's got to be one of his darkest hours. I mean, yeah, it's to freak out. Like we didn't have.
It's one of the reasons too why, you know, we like to have people on like you, people that care about other people.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And there's not a ton of people out there that are that, you know?
What I can say is that I walked into that room and I saw this guy who looked like a badass. I mean, Adrian's a badass.
Right.
I mean, he looks like a badass. He can command a room like nobody else's business. And I saw this guy and I just saw him so dejected, and I looked at his hand and I was like, oh goodness. It was all red and inflamed, and there was pus coming out of the hand. And I said, this is not something you want to wait on. And he talked to me and said, look, Doc, I don't have insurance. And I walked out, talked to my staff and said, we need to get this guy on, no holes barred. Let's just get this done. So I took him to the operating room, and the story to follow is actually pretty funny as well. And it involves Daniel, who is my brother, my right-hand man.
That's your office manager,
right?
Yep.
So we clean up his hand, clean out the infection, put a nice little dressing on it. They have a show like within a couple of days later, right? And they were so kind that they invited my entire staff, not only me, my entire staff backstage. They were signing autographs.
Dude, that was the acoustic from the Root Show when we had the wall up.
No, this was an electric show.
Oh, was it?
This was like where.
And
I'll tell you,
at Sunset.
At Sunset, and I'm going to tell you why it was an electric show, because Adrian goes into Adrian mode. Right.
Yeah.
And he starts, doing everything, as animated as he is. He's like pounding his chest, doing the whole Adrian Patrick thing. Right. And he busts the wound open.
That's right.
It's like within a couple of days. Right. And, they get to like an intermission, and he's invited us and our whole staff. My whole staff is there. He comes up to me and says, hey, Doc, I got a problem. It's like, what? I look down his hand. It's bleeding everywhere. I'm like, oh my God.
You got any threads on you? Yarn and a needle?
Literally. And that's where Daniel comes into play. Daniel's an EMT, firefighter. He's done everything. He's a horse wrangler. He's worked for Apple. He's worked for Microsoft. This man has done everything.
Love it.
He's like, don't worry, Doc. I'll be right back. He runs to his truck, comes back with an entire medical kit. We dress Adrian back up, get him back up on stage, and they control the show, and they continue the show and control the show. And the cool thing is that's actually when I first met your parents.
Yeah.
It's truly when I first met your parents. And they had like their own little booth over there at Sunset Station.
Those Sunset Station shows were fun.
And they just...
Well, I thought that's the first place that I met you is at the Sunset Station. I think it was the acoustic show.
The acoustic show. Yeah. Remember when they had like the tiny little tables?
Correct.
That was really
so
cool.
choice,
Oh,
right?
those were cool, man.
Yeah.
We
recorded that too, and that was the first From the Roots. I
have that
album live,
and some of those songs, including your covers and everything, they show up on my on my playlist. You guys are on my playlist when I'm in the operating room.
Yeah, you tell me that. I think that's so wild. It's like, dude, I'm in there. You're in there working on people. It's such a fascinating when we get to have drinks and dinner and we're hanging out after a day. I'm like, oh, I taught some kids guitar and I went to the gym. And I wrote a song, and they're like, yeah, man, I reconstructed a guy's entire arm, and then I did this operation and that operation. And it's like fascinating. It's unbelievable what you do.
How many operations, studio. How many operations do you do in a day or a week? Like, how does that, I always wondered that with doctors. Are they doing 1 operation a week, 5 a week?
It depends on the length of the operation. For instance, like on Monday, I did a hand and then I did a tummy tuck. Mm-hmm. The most operations I've done in a day is an 18.
Wow.
And that was a situation where it was right around Christmas time. And one of the employees, one of the other surgeons in the practice, this was actually at the Brown Hand Center. He went to New York for Christmas and he got stuck because there was a snowstorm. So I had to take on all his patients. So he had 9 cases. I had 9 cases. And they're like, well,
who's going to do it?
These people have taken off their time, especially at the end of the year, because everybody's trying to meet their deductibles.
Sure.
They want to make sure that they get their cases done. So we just did it. Just had to do it.
Yeah.
But on occasion, on average, anywhere from about 5 to 6 cases. Depends if I'm doing small little hand cases, probably about 5 to 6
in a week. Or in a day?
Like on Friday. Yeah, no, on a day.
In a day. Okay.
On Friday, I'm doing a rhinoplasty, and then I'm doing a whole bunch of office work. So every day is different, and that's the beauty of my job. Every day is different. Every operation is different. The scope of my practice is so variable that it gives me a lot of excitement. It's just like playing a different song. You can play a ballad or you can play a hard rock song, but it keeps you interested.
Right.
What I thought was so fascinating about what you said on your website is that you were interested in it because it was an art form. Yeah. And I never looked at doctors as an art form.
Yeah.
But it hit me at that point when I read it, and I'm like, wow, it really is another form of art.
Yeah. Well, and this is probably something else that you probably don't know about me, but my dad was a textile chemical engineer. Okay. And I was introduced to textiles at a very young age. And in fact, I worked in his factory. I worked in Paris at, the mothership of his factory. And
which is where a lot of fashion came from.
That's where fashion came from. So my first desire was to be a fashion designer.
No kidding.
I wanted to be a fashion designer.
Well, I'm sure he did too, with the way you guys are with the threads, man.
Yeah.
It's interesting. When I was working in Paris, actually, I was working in IT. I know, stereotypical Indian guy working in IT. But it was my opportunity to learn French and, really practice. And I would be there fixing computers. And I would watch these like bigwigs come in with these beautiful suits and beautiful dresses and they would lay out this cloth and they would just examine the cloth and the texture of the cloth and the quality of how it had been printed. And then in 2 seconds, they could tell you, or they could say, that's fantastic. And I would just watch from afar. And I would watch my dad do the same thing because he did that. That's what brought us to the United States because textiles was huge in the South. And so that company, that German company that he worked for 40 years, brought us to the United States so that he could run a plant here in South Carolina first, then in North Carolina. And then that brought us to Georgia and then back and forth throughout.
A lot of textiles happen in Georgia. Carpet is huge in Georgia, right? All the carpet is manufactured in Georgia. That's where we get all our carpet from for this business here for structure.
Yeah. Carpet, textiles, furniture, all because of waterways. Yeah. We need waterways for wastewater treatment and stuff like that. And that's something that I learned from my father. And I would go spend time in his factory and just watch. And I just thought to myself, I had my textile heroes, or my fashion heroes like Versace and Givenchy and all these people that I just emulated. I just loved that. But being a little guy from Macon, Georgia, I didn't know how to get out of there, but I did well in 2 things, languages and science. And it was my way of marrying art with science was surgery, and it truly is an art form. And when I was interviewing for surgical positions, people used to ask, and one of the questions they'd ask you on the interview trail was, what do you think surgery is? Do you think it's an art or a science? And I'd say it's a marriage of both, because it truly is, an objective to really appreciate and respect the human anatomy, but also put your own, eye on it, because everybody's different, and just like every fabric is different, just like every guitar is different.
Yeah.
Every drum is different. Being a drummer, every drum has a different tone,
Yeah.
When you open somebody's hand up to do surgery on it, are the muscles just a little bit different in everybody's hands? Or when you open it up, it's pretty much exactly the same and you know what to expect?
Well, nothing's like the textbook, but I will say this, like, for instance, if I operate on a man's hand versus a woman's hand, sometimes the ligaments may be a little bit thicker. There might be more muscle involved in that. And, I can encounter, because I do a lot of endoscopic procedures, minimally invasive procedures using small, tiny cameras. And I can see that there's more muscle ingrained with the ligaments versus in a female's hands. Like if you take a tiny little Asian woman, she's going to have very, very thin transverse carpal ligament for carpal tunnel release. You get this big laborer, that's out there, a construction worker, he's built his hands up. There's going to be a lot of muscle in there.
Right.
In general, we know the anatomy. We know it's like law, the law, but there's always some variability to it. And you have to keep in mind, that's where the art comes into it. It's like being able to navigate that. There every day when you operate, it's like Christmas morning. Sometimes you don't know what you're going to get. You don't know what that fracture is going to look like. You look at it on the X-ray and it looks like a distal radius fracture, and you get in there, it's like a bomb went off, But it's like anything, you get an adrenaline rush, and you realize that a mission has to be accomplished, like anything in life, right?
Yeah, you've had exhibits that had to, 48-hour days.
Longest days I've ever worked straight without sleep was 52 hours. So 52 hours straight to get a job done for Tony Hawk.
Yeah.
And it wasn't our fault. It was something that they had asked us, like, hey, we screwed up on the dates for Berkeley. Can you guys get this done faster for us?
Wow.
And we're like, how much faster? Oh, well, we needed to ship in 4 days.
That's when you were doing the traveling Tony Hawk exhibit?
Correct.
Where it was like, did it involve like physics of skateboarding?
Yeah, it was
pretty cool.
It was
really cool.
It was a large exhibit with multiple different types of exhibits within one large exhibit that traveled in 6 semis. And it was teaching kids about physics through skateboarding. So it traveled across the United States, and it was really cool because I got to take Tony Hawk's original skateboard, his first skateboard, and there's a picture of it in the museum exhibit, and I got to place that skateboard inside this sealed vault. I don't know if it's still there because I don't know if it's still traveling around, but I got to take his skateboard, and I was a huge fan of Tony Hawk when I was a kid. I was a
Yeah.
We were all skateboarders at that time, when we were kids, and it was one of the coolest things.
Dude, even if you I couldn't skate to save my life, but Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, the video game came out. Yeah. He just had like a complete resurgence of being the coolest freaking guy on the planet.
Yeah.
Because his video game was so awesome.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But 52 hours straight on that with 7 other of our guys that just stuck around.
That's intense.
To get it done. One of our welders, when he took his shirt off, from the cuffs of his shirt all the way down,
black,
completely black.
Wow.
Right. And he is one of the whitest guys on earth. And so the rest of them is just white. And he just went into my office and just laid down on the ground and was out.
Wow.
And then I had to, from my side of it, I had to go. I went home, got 3 hours of sleep, jumped on a plane, flew to San Francisco, got into a taxi, drove the taxi to Berkeley, started setting up the exhibit that night, got it ready for the morning.
Jeez.
Show was open the next day, and Tony Hawk was there skateboarding. We'll show you some pictures.
So it's longer than it was longer than 52 hours.
Well, I had 3 hours of sleep in between that. So 52 hours straight with no sleep.
Wow.
Right.
That's crazy, man.
That's intense.
So it's a crazy business. Trade show and event and museum business is crazy, but the show's going to open without you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's not going to wait on us to get done with the job, right? It's going to open regardless, and we got to make sure the client's taken care of. So.
Absolutely.
I've recently understood better just from, again, we go out to a lot of events together, political events, social mixers, all different ranges of things. And, one thing I do notice a lot, sharply dressed gentleman, doctor, engineered aesthetics, your brand here in town is very well known. You are very well known.
Can you pull that up, Alex?
Yeah. Engineered aesthetics. And people tend to just think that you're the man with, an ATM in your back pocket, or like your life is so easy because, your doctor, can you do this? Can you do that? But what I found out more, like your job is not just surgery and play. Like you have to go to court. Mm-hmm. Like you have to prepare to speak before a judge. I mean, that is, did you know you were going to have to cause that's pretty stressful, I would assume cause I was so confused. I'm like, why do you have to go speak before the judge? You're the guy fixing things and helping things, but I guess it makes sense, but man, that's a big pressure. Can you just quickly kind of touch on when, I guess the process, someone's brought to you and it's like a legal scenario and then you have to go and testify.
Yeah, I do. I've been on 5 court trials now, which is more than a lot of physicians have. And I've been told that more than a lot of lawyers actually have been in trial too. So I do a lot of expert witness work where somebody may have had an injury and, obviously the defense may not want to cover the cost of that injury or whatever it may be. So on occasion, I have to testify on behalf of the plaintiff and say, no, this person never had these problems before, had a motor vehicle crash, and now they have their symptoms. But in the same regard, also from a defense standpoint, if a person had a pre-existing condition and they're trying to attribute something to a recent motor vehicle crash, I also will, have to testify on the behalf of the defense as well. So I'm very neutral when it comes to that. I look at every case very logically. I look at the evidence. I'm usually handed, a deck per se, or an entire file of information that I have to review. In fact, just today I'm reviewing 2,000 pages of, a patient that was involved in a motor vehicle crash, ended up with something that's called capsular contracture, where the seatbelt can actually, come across the breast, and you can get some like tightening of the breast where they've had a previous breast augmentation. And so I'm reviewing all of that data and seeing whether or not it truly was attributed to the motor vehicle crash, or is it something they had before? And it requires me to comb through a lot of that information. Is it something that I sought out? No, but for some reason, people saw the work that I was doing, and they loved my reports, because my reports are very detailed, and the word just starts spreading. Just like,
so they're calling you as the professional.
As the expert witness, yeah.
I've had to do that for trade show exhibits before too, but yeah, so I totally understand where you're coming from.
So that it makes sense to you, and just in the last 5 months, I was on the stand twice as an expert witness. One for a dog bite and one for a hand injury, I just get up there and I tell my perspective. Tell my perspective of exactly what happened. Mm-hmm. What was the injury? Was this causally related to that incident, or was there something else involved? Mm-hmm. And then what the treatment plan is. My job is not necessarily to say, this is what caused it, this is not what caused it. My job generally tends to be what the treatment plan is for that. But sometimes I am called to say, hey, listen, this person didn't have this dog bite before this certain incident, and now he does. And he's concerned about this because everybody thinks it looks like this, like a bullet wound or something of the sort. And he doesn't want to walk around town looking like he has a bullet wound, because that, gives off a certain persona or whatever it may be.
Sure.
That was actually probably one of the more recent cases that I did.
So you're doing these all the time then?
I'm doing a fair amount. I've got 3 right now on my plate.
Okay, wow.
And another 4th one coming up. But, I do that intermittently between operating and seeing patients in clinic and trying to maintain a good work-life balance and trying to maintain my hobbies and take care of my pups. And, all
Speaking
that kind
of
stuff.
hobbies, you're also an extraordinary photographer.
Wow. I appreciate you saying that.
When did that passion of yours come into fruition?
Well, coincidentally, it actually started when I was doing my surgical residency, and I was roasted. When you graduate, you're just like the Tom Brady roast.
Yeah.
We all get roasted in our graduation. And
fuck you, Nitin.
Fuck you, Nitin. Little Kevin Hart for you there, right?
I love that. So, I would always take pictures. I always had my little Canon point and shoot because I just loved taking pictures of, the procedures that we were doing. And every graduating resident or fellow would have a certain attending that would be their kind of roaster, right? And she asked from, all these pictures that I'd taken in the operating room, and she put up this one picture of me. I think it was like some bowel operation. There was fat. And it's like, there's only one person that can make fat look that good. and I looked at that picture and I was laughing about it. And then it took off from there. And then when I, my first gift to myself when I finished fellowship was I wanted to buy a really nice camera. And I bought, and one of my friends kind of helped me pick out a Canon, and I shoot with Canon still to this day.
Yeah, that's what I shoot with too.
And I love them.
Fantastic.
And it was like a 50D, it was like one of the old schools, which I ended up turning into an infrared camera, and I've graduated since then. But, I started taking classes at, I was a professor I would say adjunct instructor over at the University of Louisville when I joined my mentor in partnership in practice. And with that, I got to start taking photography classes, and then I took that to the next level. I moved out here to Nevada. I mean, you can't find a better place to shoot. And then I became part of the Nevada Camera Club. I became a president of the Nevada Camera Club.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't know that either.
I did that for 2 years. I went to Africa twice. I've done safaris.
Can we pull up some of
cameras?
Engineered Photography's page? I mean, dude, that's my favorite picture you've ever taken, man.
Yeah, that's so good.
That was an interesting morning. We woke up. That was probably on one of our next to the last, mornings, and we woke up, we were out on the truck, and, the guide had said we'd found 2 lions that were just kind of just scouring the plains. And we followed these 2 guys, and they were brothers. And we just followed them, and we followed them for probably a good couple of hours. Wow. And they led us right into the lion's den. And I don't know if you can see a few pictures. The cubs that I shot, which is probably one of my favorite pictures. That's a black and white version of that, but you can, they're the cubs right there.
To the left.
Yeah. And we came across these cubs.
That picture's so cool, man.
So good.
And these 2 cubs, and they just happened to turn over, and one cub put his paw on the other cub's eye. And it's still to this day one of my favorite pictures. I love shooting in monochrome. I love shooting in infrared. I've now, since at the time I had a 5D Mark III, I converted my 5D Mark III into an infrared. And then I started shooting a 5D Mark IV. I had a 1DX Mark II, which was great for, shooting a lot of rapid fire stuff. And then we were talking about, now I have the R5. I still haven't taken that out. I just use that.
The R5 is just absolutely incredible. You want to take shots as fast as possible. I mean, it'll take shots as fast as video can take, right?
It's extraordinary.
So you just hold it down.
Wow. Yeah.
And now, I don't know if you read, but the R1 is coming out, which is going to be, it's always the flagship model.
It's going to be comparable to their 1DX Mark IV or 1DX Mark X or whatever they called it.
Yeah, it's the 1DX Mark II, I think, is what it was the last one that came out before they came out with mirrorless. But They haven't even released all the stats on this. They just announced it like 4 or 5 days ago.
Oh, great.
So I know it's like great. More money out of the pocket.
Yeah. What do you think that camera is going to cost?
Probably about $6,000. Probably
I would say probably 8.
6 to 8. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just for the
probably
body.
8. My R5 was, I want to say when I bought it, well, I have 2 of them, but when I bought it, I think it was $3,700 roughly. And that's like, it was the flagship when it came out. Then they came out with the R6, R7, R8, R3, which is a higher end than the R5 is. And now they're coming out with the 1. I think the 3 is right around $6,000.
Yeah.
So I'm sure the 1 will be 8.
And their lenses, then you have to get a whole new series of lenses now. And so, because they're all mirrorless lenses, or they're
RF. So RF instead of the EF. Now, the good thing about it is that the mirrorless camera has an adapter for it. So you got an RF to EF adapter. So you can still use your old lenses, but you can't use the new lenses on the old cameras, right?
Right.
Because it's too close to the sensors. So, but yeah, I mean, I've got, it's stupid. That's why I was telling you, Ryan, get the Canon, because then you can borrow the lenses and you don't have to go out and spend all the money.
So literally tomorrow I'm buying my first Canon camera.
Nice.
Yeah.
What are you going to get?
He told me, I don't know.
The R6 is what I told him to grab. Yeah.
Great camera. I can't get into the lingo yet. You know, it's like, I'm at that stage where like, I'm getting a guitar and it's got strings on it. Yeah. And I'm going to learn some chords.
Well, think about
like that's where I am with the Canon.
Well, think about, you teaching me about the guitar and how complex it is for me. I'm learning, the scales, and you're always teaching me where that same chord is up here, just in a different configuration. The same thing with the camera. Same with cameras. Yeah. You just learn,
You learn. And the funny thing about it is too, and it kind of reminds me of guitar, right? Because you always told me like, dude, it's just 3 notes, right? It's just 3 notes. Well, there's just 3 things on a camera you got to worry about, right? Yep. And that's the aperture, the shutter speed, and the ISO, right? And you're adjusting those 3 components before you take your shot.
Would you agree with that?
And I'll tell you why that's very relative, because it's the human body. Okay. So your aperture, so if you're walking to a dark room, what does your eye do? It dilates, right? That's your aperture. When you're trying to squint and see something from far away, you're going to squint and your pupil is going to constrict. That's your aperture. Your shutter speed is how fast you blink. And then your ISO is your retina. And that's your sensor. And that's how it receives the information and how it records it on the card.
Interesting.
It's very simple. Yeah. Actually, it's very simple. If you love that. And that, I've taught some photography classes, and it's just some basics of like how to, take a photograph. So if you want to take a blurred image, you want the blink to be really slow. But in order for you to keep it in focus, you're going to have to probably narrow the aperture. Or maybe raise the ISO or something of the sort.
Right. And if you want a slimmer depth of field, then you want to open the aperture up, right? Where we're only capturing something within a certain distance. Everything in front and behind that is blurred.
Shoot. Yeah. Right. And nowadays with the ISO, back in the day, ISO was so bad that you would have these grainy images. You had a nice clear image, but it'd be so grainy with what they've done now to the sensors.
Oh, it's insane.
It's insane. You can have an ISO like
5600 and there's no grain.
And there's no grain.
Or even 32,000, I think is what they go up to.
12,800, 32,000. You can, and there's no grain. And it's beautiful. Like those pictures that I took up there, they were, it was midday. It's kind of like mid-morning. Great, kind of that golden hour, and so that's why they turned out really well. That's 6 a.m., 7 a.m. And that's why the light just hit those lines just right.
Shadows paint and light paints. And that's why it's the best time to take a photo in the morning or just before the sun goes down, because golden hours. Light is just painting onto the landscapes and onto animals and those things. Yeah.
And there are apps you can actually get to say when the sunset's going to set and where you need to be for a certain photograph or whatever you may. It's really cool.
Well, a lot of the times, like Brian Medeiros, right?
Oh, Brian Medeiros is amazing.
He's amazing, right? He follows a lot of Peter Lick's stuff, right? Yeah. So Peter Lick, he'll go to the places on the same day at the same time that Peter Lick took the photo, so he can give his interpretation of it too, which is kind of a fun thing if you're a photographer and you want to do vacations and things like that. You can kind of build vacations around when Peter Lick took his photos, because Peter Lick is one of the most amazing photographers on earth.
Yeah.
And Brian in his own right is another one. And judging from the stuff that I just saw on the screen there, Nitin, another new thing I didn't know about you. And I mean, those are amazing.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
No, but Brian is phenomenal. In fact, I've talked to him on multiple occasions of just going up to Utah and shooting with him. He's not only is he an inspirational drummer, but he's also an inspirational photographer, multi-talented. Just
some of the animals that he's photographed, I'm like, I know he took that in the zoo. There's no way he was up hiking. He took that in the zoo. Yeah. Incredible shots.
It's crazy stuff.
Yeah.
It's crazy stuff.
That's too good, man. So if you have been all over the world, is there any place if you could pick to go and just spend time in and take your camera? Where would it be? Where have you not been yet with your camera?
Where have I not been, or where would I go again?
Ooh, both.
Where would I go again? India. I love India.
Yeah. The motherland,
magical,
baby.
the motherland. Yeah. But more importantly, it's a magical place where people actually are kind and welcoming, and there's so much variability. I mean, we obviously, we have some Indian background roots, so we know the food is extraordinary, the smells, as soon as you land there, you're in somewhere that's just a little bit special, that was placed on this planet for a reason. I do want to go to Iceland. I would love to do that.
My sister and I were planning a trip. And my wife shut us down when the volcano erupted. Yeah. But my sister sending me all the stuff, and she's like, "Oh, look, they can even do the jeeping stuff through there, and they'll take us through jeeps, and we have a guide." And we were supposed to go in just this upcoming November. Then all the streets were burst. And,
wow.
Yeah, it's crazy up there right now.
Well, that's a bucket list location. Costa Rica. I want to go shoot
You were just in Costa Rica, weren't you, right?
Yeah, I want to photograph. We talked about this. I said,
I want to go. Birthday.
Yeah, I was like, I want to go shoot the frogs.
Shoot the frogs.
Shoot the frogs. No, I mean photograph the frogs.
Shoot the frogs.
We were talking about that with Steele. It's like, got to change, the wording.
The wording of
here. We're not
because you're also like, I want to shoot them. I'm like, bro, that's a gun, dude.
I'm like, no, it's a Canon camera. Oh, it's a Canon. No, I want to photograph the frogs. They have these beautiful tree frogs there. They're all these beautiful colors. I hate the cold, but I've always wanted to go to, somewhere Arctic, or Antarctica, there's explorations out there.
Yeah. The trip just to get there would be incredible, let alone getting there, right? The trip to Antarctica. Oh, yeah. I don't know if you've seen these ships and how the storms, they're going through these storms.
Yeah, they're going through the storms. They're going through all those icebergs. I have just recently, when I went to Africa on a couple of occasions, and on one of the trips, the guy that leads the trip out there, he has these extraordinary experiences. And most recently, he's got something where you can go out and photograph the snow leopards in Kathmandu or outside in Nepal or something of the sort. So that would be another bucket list for me. So I think those are kind of the big ones.
Yeah.
If I make it that long.
You will. That's another.
Well, your dad's 92, you said. So
I just turned 50, man. Yeah.
You got 42 more years to make those trips.
Yeah, right.
At least, right?
I hope.
Yeah, me as well.
I hope.
Me as well. My grandmother died in December.
Oh, sorry.
And thank you. And she was 99.
Wow.
Yeah, she's 99. She almost made it to 100.
She lived a full life, though. Huh?
She really did. She lived a full life and happy all the way through it.
I love it.
All the way through it.
Yeah. I love it.
She was the most joyous lady on earth.
Did she have any wisdom on how to live this life? Some simple words.
Take everything simple, I think, is the way she always lived life is, there's, no regrets in anything that you do, and just be happy about everything. She's always happy. She, when we were kids and we'd go back there in the summertime, and this is in the, 80s, and, she didn't really know anything about rock music, but she knew about rock music. She knew what we liked. Right. And she would hide things in the house, and it was always music. Def Leppard tapes, right?
I love it.
Def Leppard tapes. She just hide it. That's how I got my Def Leppard tape. Is because she hid it and I found it. White Lion, White Snake.
Oh, don't
right?
get me started.
I mean,
on these
all
guys.
this stuff, right?
It.
And she knew the bands to pick, and she'd hide those tapes in the house and we'd find them. She was huge, big on music, but really, she was an incredible artist.
Yeah.
And she would draw these, and that's what made me, and that's what I do. My background is design.
Mm-hmm.
And growing up, I would watch her draw, and she'd draw these beautiful women in gowns, right? And she could draw it so fast. And it was just like with the stroke of her pencil, and all of a sudden it was this beautiful models that were like, just in these beautiful gowns. And I'd watch her do that, and I just want to do it,
Do you still have some of those pieces?
I do. A matter of fact, when I was out there last, I was out there a couple of years ago. My other grandmother had passed away, and I was out there. So my mom took me into her basement, and we got a couple of books and just a few pieces, though. Just a few pieces. We couldn't find any of them. And I think one of my aunts or uncles must have the majority of her drawings. But I got one or two pieces, and I have them at the house.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
It's so incredible.
I mean, you've been to my house, and the art. That's the kind of art that I think that
I've been there, and it's I love just walking around and looking at your walls.
When you came to Nitin's house, I know you were surprised for the board meeting. You know, what did you think?
I thought that the coolest thing in there, and we talked about it when we were there, was the skull with the piece on it. That had the metal section over it that was used for, I believe, nose surgery, where it would hold the hand in place.
Yeah.
Talk to us about that. I mean, such an interesting story about plastic surgery and what they used to do for.
What logo is that?
That's actually the logo for the American Society. That's the old logo for the American Society of Plastic Surgery.
Alex, can you try and pull that logo up real quick? And then
it's an old one. It's called a tagliacosi flap.
Say that again. The plastic surgery.
American Society of Plastic Surgery.
American Society of Plastic. This blew our mind after our supper club meeting for Life by Music, the board meeting. We were sitting at your dining table and going over this piece.
So we had an halo, and it'd be cool to have that right here now. But essentially, this lady was involved in a 4th of July accident where a firework went off and it just hit her in the face. I mean, fluke accident. Hit her in the face. There it is. There's the tagliacosi flap. That's the old symbol for it. And so what we ended up doing is
explain what that graphic is right before you.
So you can see where the hand is actually attached to the scalp, actually, and you can see a splint that's holding the arm. And you see that little piece of tissue that's going from the arm to the nose. And essentially what it is barring from Peter to pay Paul. That's what plastic surgery really is. You take tissue from one area and then you reconstruct another area with it. So that tagliacosi flap actually allows that skin tissue to be reattached to the nose. At about 2 to 3 weeks, you divide that tissue and then you start reconstructing the nose.
So they wear this piece for 2 to 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Why the skin grows onto the nose.
That's exactly correct. And then you can divide it so that there's an adequate amount of blood supply to the tissue that's been transferred.
It's amazing.
Pretty cool.
It's amazing.
This goes back. This goes back thousands of years. This is not something that was just made up.
Right.
Because if you really think about plastic surgery, it's probably one of the oldest specialties in the surgical sciences. It goes back to India.
Wow.
When people would lose their nose to leprosy or, back in the day, some of the corporal punishment was to cut off their nose if they were stealing,
Yeah. Your Mama B was talking about that when we had this discussion at dinner, that she would see when she was younger. She remembered seeing some of the women that were actually in that piece.
Yeah.
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 And to reconstruct that nose, then you bar from, because this tissue is relatively pliable and flexible.
Is that where you, a lot of the times for all these body parts, where you would take tissue from that? But I assume the buttocks.
It's pretty rare. So the first big procedure that I saw that inspired me to be a hand surgeon was called a groin flap. So there was a gentleman, and this is back in Georgia when I was working as an anesthesia tech. There was a gentleman that was caught up in the North Georgia mountains in a snowstorm. He was sweeping snow out of his tent. The snow ended up resulting in frostbite, so he lost his index, his middle, his ring, and his small fingers. So he had no tissue left on that. So probably one of my first mentors, a guy named Dr. Waldo Floyd, who introduced me to hand surgery, took me under his wing when I was 17, 18 years old. I was shadowing him in his clinic and watching him do these really elegant procedures. And, hand surgery is known to be like gentleman's surgery. You sit down, it's very calm, it's very meticulous, it's very, very precisely calculated. It's a very, very defined specialty that actually came after World War II, because there was really, prior to World War II, there weren't really hand specialists. And after World War II, when there was all these traumatic injuries that were occurring, the general surgeons said, hey, listen, we need to have somebody that, takes care of these issues.
Makes sense.
So this gentleman, Dr. Floyd, he was doing a groin flap and it was in the newspaper and everything. So what we do is we actually sew the hand into the groin for 2 weeks, just like the Tagliacozzi flap.
Okay.
And there you go. There's a groin flap.
Look at that.
Yeah. And then that groin flap actually grows around the digits, and then you can use that soft tissue to cover whatever tissue is missing, whether it be the tendons, the bones, whatever it may be. Sometimes you can create, at least give them something to oppose to, or sometimes you can even recreate digits that have some sort of dexterity.
That was one of the questions I was going to ask you too, is like, what is the future of plastic surgery, right? We hear all these things about, AI going on, right?
Yeah.
Is there AI technology going on in plastic surgery? What are the next steps? What do you see the future? What is the future of plastic surgery? And do we get like full hands back at some point, or,
Well, I think a lot of the prosthetics that we're doing now, even when I was back in fellowship, some of the prosthetics were some of the most amazing things. I was able to I've got some video footage of me connecting the electrodes to my forearm and moving my hand and watching the prosthetic move exactly in the direction.
Wow.
It's pretty extraordinary. It's on Star Wars level.
Yeah.
And you rotate, and it's just all about reading your hands, because we did a lot of amputations. We've taken care of some pretty complex injuries, and one day I'll share these videos with you back in Louisville where we were actually playing with these prosthetics that are just like taking it to the next level. Now, in my practice now, I don't really deal with a lot of amputations. And I think that's great for a university setting. I'm now in private practice, and I'm taking care of, the minor to the commonplace, things that affect the hands, peripheral compression neuropathies, fractures, dislocations, stuff like that. Even some minor amputations, I'll do revision amputations and stuff like that. But when you have patients that need these really complex things, it's fascinating. It is. Yeah. I mean, the scientists and the physicians that are behind the technology that's going into this, they're blowing my mind. I mean, you're talking about like you're talking about like the John Bonhams of drums, you're talking about, the John Frusciantes of guitars, you're talking about like the geniuses out there that are doing this on the scientific level that are, I mean, it's mind blowing. And I love to sit back and read the journal articles and see what people are doing. But ultimately, I mean, the future's wide open. Especially when it comes to AI. I don't know where AI is going to take medicine. I will tell you from an aesthetic standpoint, AI is probably going to, it could be positive, it could be negative as well, because there's a lot of
two different directions.
Two different directions. You got AI, and you're taking these beautiful women, and then they're getting plugged into these AI programs, and now they feel like their own beauty is not sufficient enough, and now they want to look like their AI image.
Yeah,
so,
right. I feel so bad when I see that.
It's a double-edged sword.
It's like your profile picture is the AI picture of you.
Yeah,
you're a pretty girl. this is what's going on here? Like your regular picture is better.
Well, I think these social media websites and everything, I think they're really warping our young people's minds.
Take the word young out. It's people.
People in general. People in general.
No, young is the most susceptible to this rotting of the brains. But
and we have something in plastic surgery called BDD, body dysmorphic disorder.
Right.
And
do you see that occurring more often now than you did before?
I'm seeing a fair amount of it. I mean, I think it's been pretty equivalent. I'm fortunate that the nature of my practice is pretty diverse, that I do cosmetic surgery, reconstructive surgery, and hand surgery. So I get a good cross section of the entire specialty itself. Mm-hmm. But in the cosmetic realm, I am seeing a lot more of it where people are coming in saying that, I had a gentleman come in the other day and he was 30 and he wanted a brow lift. And I said, why do you want a brow lift? So, well, because everywhere I go, people say that I look mad. I'm like, well, what are you talking about?
That's just because he's like frowning?
Like frowning all the time.
Wow.
And I said, well, that's not really the indication for a brow lift right there. Mm-hmm. And then he had looked up all these procedures of where you can actually denervate, which means take the nerve innervation out of one of the muscles here. Mm-hmm. And I had to tell him, I was like, I don't think I'm the guy to do that for you, because I don't want to go down that road with you, because I don't think you'll ever be happy. And you can always, and part of my job is to figure out, it takes a smart surgeon to know when not to operate as opposed to when to operate.
Right.
And,
that was one of the questions I had for you too, is that, when have you run into these unrealistic expectations that, these patients have had? You've talked to them about what the surgery is. You tell them what is going to be the end result or what's the possible end result. Talk to us about a few of those situations, or a situation where, they had unrealistic expectations and still went through with it, or.
Well, that was a perfect example. I usually can read a person pretty well, and my staff knows this pretty well as well, that when I go into a room, I'll read a patient and then I'll let them just tell me their story. Mm-hmm. Dad's principle, I live by my dad's principles. My dad told me, God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth. Listen twice as much as you speak.
Love that.
And so I usually sit back and I just let them voice what their concerns are. And while they're doing that, I'm analyzing them. I'm analyzing their facial expressions, what side of their face is more dominant, what side is not more dominant, where their real concerns are. Are they truly concerns? How they blink, where they have deficits, their mannerisms, their behavior. Is it erratic? Is it something a little bit more normal? And after I make that assessment, then after they're done, what I call running out of gas, just basically letting them voice all their concerns, then I take the floor, and then we start. I give them I give them the opportunity to give me a priority list. Mm-hmm. What are your top 5 things that you would like to change? And then we go through each one of those. And I say, all right, this one, it's reasonable, but I don't think that you're going to get the results that you want. This one, yes, we can fix that. Pretty straightforward, home run. This one, oh, well, you want to look like, Angelina Jolie, but you don't have the bone structure of Angelina Jolie. You don't have, the body habitus of Angelina Jolie.
So are they coming in with requests like that? I want to look like this person.
Oh, yeah.
They want to look like
this they come in with their phones and their Instagrams and they say,
you get a lot of Ryan Patricks. I want to look just like Ryan Patrick.
You'd be surprised how every guy on the planet wants to look like Ryan Patrick.
It's impossible. Sorry.
Okay. So I know I've come in and asked for the same thing, and you're like, listen, you're just never going to have the hair for it.
There's not enough Bitcoin on this planet to pay for
that. Ask Tom Brady.
Yeah, okay. Except for Tom Brady, maybe.
Nice. Or Gronk.
Yeah.
What's crazy. What's the most common ask?
They want a nose that looks like a certain person, and that
Mhm.
nose is just not going to fit their face.
Mhm.
You know, and I'm pretty particular about the patients that I take on, and I may not be, you know, having the greatest volume, but I'm very selective about the patients that I choose to operate on. And that's why I feel like my complication rate is low. And, you know, I feel like, you know, the patients that we get are very happy. And I also gauge it by the way that they treat my staff. Because, and I think this is very important to state, because sometimes patients will come in and they'll come in very entitled, and they may not be very kind to my staff. But then when I walk in the room, they're a different person. And my staff they're very good at detecting that. Another principle that my mentor told me said, never operate on somebody you don't like, or never operate on somebody that's not ready for an operation, or never operate on somebody that you're not ready to operate on. And different things can come into that. You know, for instance, if somebody comes in, they want a tummy tuck, I ask them what their ideal weight is. And they may weigh 180 pounds. I'm like, well, what do you want your ideal weight to be? 160. All right, let's get you to 160.
You could do that with exercise.
Exercise, and then I'll do your tummy tuck. Because there are certain things when it comes to skin laxity, you just can't get that back.
Right.
For instance, if you've had a couple of kids and, you know, the skin is stretched and you've got those stretch marks, and the collagen itself doesn't have the elasticity that it used to. You can't gain that back.
Right.
There are certain non-surgical things that we can do. You know, microneedling, fractional plasma, skin resurfacing, but some of it is just never going to come back. Those stretch marks, that's a sign of collagen weakness. And so better thing to do is just excise that skin. But let's get you to your ideal weight first, because that's when you're going to get your best results.
Right.
Let's get you to your ideal weight. Then I'm going to take off that skin, and now
And you might be done.
You might be done.
I've seen these pictures. You know, you see the advertisements for, you know, lose weight, get in shape, blah, 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 drink these shakes, everything else. And you see these really heavy guys, right?
Sure.
And then, you know, 6 months later, you see they're ripped, right? Is that possible? Or do they have to have this skin surgery when they're overweight like that? Does sometimes the skin go back to normal?
It's variable. It's variable. Okay. I think the darker your skin, you know, and that all has to do with anatomy, you know, so people like Ryan and I, we have darker skin, right? So our dermis tends to be a little bit thicker, a little bit more resistant to that laxity. Okay. I'll tell you, you know, I've got a little tummy too, and I'm working on it. I work out 2 or 3 times a week. I'm doing my best. I'm in the best shape that I ever have been. And I've even told my trainer, I was like, I just can't lose this. She's like, well, it comes down to diet. And there are certain
80%.
Yeah.
Right?
And there are certain vices that I love. Coca-Cola. I just love Coca-Cola. I'll never, you know, I always have to have 1 or 2 Coca-Colas a day. And I love Mediterranean food, and that has a lot of rice. I love Indian food, has a lot of rice. I love Thai food, has a lot of rice, you know, but I have to have that, you know, and could I discipline myself to eat just lean chicken and broccoli and have one of those boring diets? Yeah, I'm sure I could. And I'm a lot fitter now than I have been, just because of my workout regimen and controlling my diet a little bit better. But everybody is a little bit different. I eat once a day.
Yeah.
You know, I don't eat breakfast.
That's huge right there, just eating once a day. Because you're almost fasting for 24 hours every day, right?
And I've been doing that for 30 years.
That's how my dad was.
Yeah.
He always said, just once a day, son.
I'm like my German Shepherd. My German Shepherd eats once a day. My Belgian Malinois eats 3 times a day.
They're in great, the German Shepherd's in great shape.
She's, you met Lola. Now you got to meet Lana. Lana is, she's sleek. She's like a little panther.
No kidding. No.
Yeah, and she's growing quickly. But she eats 3 times a day. I eat once a day because I don't like to eat breakfast, because I know I'm going to be operating all day. I don't want to have any issues.
You know, no lag, right?
No lag, nothing of the sort. Sometimes I might grab a little lunch, just a little snack or something of the sort. But dinner, I'm going to eat a big dinner.
Yeah.
And that's just going to carry me over, and that'll be my protein intake. And I drink protein shakes throughout the day.
Okay. So you still supplement then?
Supplement, of course. Yeah. I take my vitamins, you know, do my protein shakes. And, you know, nowadays, you know, been doing a lot of collagen, shakes and stuff like the collagen powder, shakes. Do those.
That's what my wife just started doing too. She's like, you need to do this.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah. I feel like my skin, feels a little bit better. I've always had dry skin, and especially in the Nevada heat, my skin will really, really dry. But like don't listen to what I do for my skin regimen. People laugh at me. It's 99-cent Suave with a loofah. Whereas, we're selling like all these like beautiful skin products, but everybody's different,
Right.
And I respond well to that. The other skin products, they don't really work for me in the same way as, my current skin regimen works.
I always thought about it like this, and I'm like, okay, as soon as I start supplementing with like lotion, and I've never ever really worn lotion or put lotion on before, and I'm like, because then my body's going to get used to like needing lotion all the time. So I'm like, if I just don't ever use lotion, my body won't ever need lotion. So that was always kind of my mindset.
Yeah.
So I've never really used lotion at all. Is there any truth to that, or
no? I think that's an urban. I think that's an urban legend. I think everybody. So there's 6 different skin types, right? There's It's the Fitzpatrick scale. So imagine like a Fitzpatrick 1 to be anywhere from an albino to
as opposed to the Ryan Patrick scale.
Yeah.
As opposed to the Ryan Patrick.
I was just thinking our bass player Sean Fitzpatrick. That boy white.
He white.
So that's
so he'd be like a 1. He'd be like a 1 or a 2, right? So 2, then you get to kind of a fair skinned Caucasian. 3 would be like your normal Caucasian. 4 would be like a Latino. I'm a 5, and then African American would be like 6.
Okay,
right. And so the darker your skin goes, the more resistant you are. There you go.
There it is.
Yeah, the darker your skin goes, the more you have resistance to wrinkling and so on. But our healing is different too. So, for instance, if I scar dark, and somebody that's like a type 1 redhead, fair skin, they're going to scar very lightly and almost
it'll be done.
You won't even be able to.
Yeah, I scar so easily. It's crazy. Yeah, and the scar will stick around. It's like the smallest little like, blackhead. Okay, let me take. And it's like, boom. It's like scarred, bruised.
Yeah. I always point to this little spot that I have. That's an acne scar from when I was like 10 or 15 or something of the sort. Yeah. There it is. Right there.
My wife, she's using tallow, beef tallow, I think.
Okay.
She had a little thing that was on her arm right here, and the skin doctor removed it. And she's putting like a beef tallow on there or something, and it's healing like incredibly. She had burned herself with a curling iron on her forehead, and that was the first time she used the beef tallow. And within a week, she just kept it covered and kept the beef tallow on it.
Interesting.
Within a week, can't even see it. And she's Native American. So she has a little bit of a darker skin tone.
She's probably a 4 or 5. 4 or 5. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You sure she's not doing that because you're a carnivore, bro? She's just getting time to put her in the oven, baby.
Baby, that's it. That's why she does it.
Dinner time.
Damn, I wasn't even realizing that blew right over my head.
She's like,
I gotta go.
That's funny. No, I think that the number one thing, if you have a scar, silicone gel. Silicone has so many great properties. First and foremost, it keeps the wound hydrated. It can also be a very protective layer. It can actually help organize the collagen as you scar. Collagen comes in and it's going to remodel over the course of the first 12 weeks to a year after the injury. And you get your collagen type 3, which is the first type of collagen that comes down. It's very disorganized, but if you lay down silicone, it can help actually organize it without getting too deep into the science, help organize those fibrils.
I see.
So that you get a little bit more of an organized scar. So silicone is huge. I advise my patients 3 or 4 times a day, just rub some silicone in there. Sunscreen is massively important, especially if you have a scar. Sunscreen. I don't care if you're Fitzpatrick 1 or Fitzpatrick 6, doesn't matter. Put sunscreen on a scar. Otherwise, UV light and all the harmful things that come with sunlight can actually cause that scar to darken.
I see.
And so that's very essential. Massage. That softens up scar. I'm sure we've all had scars, right? And, it gets very hard. So the more you massage it, the softer it can get.
Even after the scar is like what we would consider permanent, can you go back and say, well, let me massage the scar up and put some more silicone on there and keep it covered up and moisten it up? Can you get rid of that?
Ideally, those first 12 weeks is the kind of that's the sweet spot and the golden hour, right? Just like in photography. But, up to a year, massage. You'll finally see the final result of a scar, usually about 12 to 18 months after the injury.
Okay.
And that's when you know what it's going to finally look like. And that's when we can come back and we can do different things like microneedling or fractional plasma to soften up or resurface the scar. We can even use chemical peels, especially if it's a darkened scar. We have to be very cautious, and the darker your skin type, the more we have to be cautious about using certain modalities such as lasers. Like, you really don't want to use a laser on a Fitzpatrick 6 or a Fitzpatrick 5 or Fitzpatrick 4.
It knows, it shows.
Yeah, it'll show. You can actually hyperpigment the area. So then we use a wavelength that's going to be a little bit lighter. I mean, because, even darker skinned people need to have some hair removal, and we might use that in a certain setting, But it's variable, patient to patient to patient. So you can't just like globally say and cast a net and say everybody's going to get the same thing.
Interesting.
I mean?
One thing I found very interesting about your field as well is, and you mentioned that the hand surgery is very meticulous and you can sit down, but there's certain surgeries that you do where you're working and you're drenched and you're burning calories and you're tugging on holding bones and is that like the tummy tuck surgery where you're
liposuction is pretty that's pretty labor intensive because you're using a cannula and you're going in that space between the skin and you're kind of in that subcutaneous space and you're passing that cannula multiple times to actually, and I use laser lipo as well, where you can actually dissolve some of the fat and then you have to suck it out. And nowadays we have power assisted liposuction where we can use a certain device that actually uses a little bit of power and that can take the load off of the surgeon. But that's pretty labor intensive. And I always tell the patient, it's going to hurt you, but it's probably going to hurt me more, and I know, I mean, my shoulder hurts the next day and, but that's part of it's just like an athlete.
Part of the process.
It's like an athlete, we're going out there, we're playing a game and we're going to hurt the next day and I think that's probably one of the more labor intensive procedures that I do. I've had some pretty complex distal radius fractures where I'm really torquing the bones to get them into the right place. And I'm having my assistant, place the screw as I'm holding them in position. But then, like if I do like a little meticulous rhinoplasty, sometimes that can be just as labor intensive because I'm using fine motor skills to, manipulate the cartilage or manipulate, the skin tissue. So, or even when I'm sewing a vessel back together, like for instance, in that penile replant, or, when I had to fix that nerve on the avocado injury, you're using these fine motor skills underneath the microscope and each stitch has to be perfect. And so that alone itself is very similar to when you teach me how to play a chord and you're like, no, move your finger like that. You got to arch your finger a little bit more. Yeah. I'm like, yeah, but that hurts. And you're like, well, that's how you're going to get that chord.
Right.
Right.
And, and then I feel it on the tips of my fingers. I'm cutting, the strings are cutting into your fingers. I'm like, God, that hurts, but it sounds so good.
I got to put this down. I'm putting it away for tonight.
Yeah.
Got enough of this one.
But it sounds so good, and you're like, I just want to keep going. Just like playing the drums, my hands hurt after playing them for a while, but you just keep going. Right?
So when you're out and you meet people who have had work done, clearly, are you able to look at someone and say, oh, that's Dr. So-and-so's work?
No. There used to be a time where there was like what they used to call it, like what's the famous street in New York City? There was like the Madison Avenue, like nose job and all this back in the day.
Right.
But nowadays, no. I mean, because, rhinoplasties are so commonplace. Everybody's kind of using the same techniques.
Right.
And,
There's no signatures on the bone in there like I did this one.
It's not,
Oh, that's Dr. McGrath.
Yeah.
Fantastic work.
it's not quite like that anymore. Yeah.
That's good. I mean, I would assume that you'd be able to notice the horrible procedures, because sometimes I see people and I'm just like, how do they think that looks good? It just looks so overdone. It's like an overproduced song.
Yeah.
Like your beautiful face, but man, you turn the drums up and the vocals are peaking and the bass, everything's too loud and it sounds like shit.
Yeah.
And, that I see people like that. I'm like, that's how I relate it. I'm like, how do you think that looks okay?
That's a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
It's a perfect analogy. And you're just happy that you didn't do that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I see it. And, my going line nowadays, because, everybody knows what I do. And, we go out and we've been out in public and people want to talk about this. And I say, look, man, I spent 12 hours talking about this all day long, or I just did this all day long. I'm off duty now.
Yeah.
I'd love to. I'd be happy to talk to you about it. Come in for a free consultation. I'll sit there for an hour and talk to you about it in my clinic.
Right.
But
during the workday.
But at some point, it's just like you. You're generous with your time. You're just a hugely generous person. You'll go out there and talk about music to anybody, right? And
I think that's more so my brother. I'm the guy who's like, okay, thanks. If it's kids or if we're like learning guitar or if it's something in that avenue. But if it's like the band stuff and it's like, okay, come on, just, what? Like we've had this conversation 8 times.
And
I know you love soldiers. But my brother is far more generous with his time.
Which I actually got to witness at the Mountains Edge Festival when I first showed up at the booth, at the Life by Music booth, and he's sitting there teaching a kid how to play chords. It was just an endearing moment. I caught it on video and I was just like, yeah.
Well, he'll always go out to the crowd too before, if the show is. He's out in line shaking all the hands of everybody waiting in line.
Yeah.
And Ryan's a little bit more reserved on that end. And I wouldn't say rude. I would say reserved. You're just a little bit more reserved.
Yeah. I definitely have years ago in my early 20s, mid 20s, it was just the party time. And now there's a lot of things I'm thinking about, you know. And
you have a lot of responsibilities too,
there's
right?
more
because you take on more of the responsibilities of the band than your brother does, right? Your brother's like, I'm the front man, and you're kind of like, I'm the business guy, right? Yeah. You're handling the business of the band along with playing in the band. So, that's a completely different animal.
Yeah, it's definitely changed now, and that has caused me to become somewhat more reserved too. I'm just like, okay, but depending on the company, the company and how the drinks are flowing and the vibe, then it's game on, But usually, yes, that is true. I'm like, hey, you want to talk about guitar? Like, I'll give you a lesson. We can sit down, like, or the fun thing now. Recently, we've been able to have our Life by Music tent, like set up that has the whole initiative, all the information you need. If you want to come over here, we've got instruments. You want to bring your kid over here, we've got information about what we do. I want to talk about that.
Yeah. Sure.
I'm slightly disenchanted with talking about, oh, did you hear about, Ronnie Radke or, did you hear what Five Finger Death Punch just released? I'm like, I don't care about that stuff anymore. I spent a lot of time but anyways, that's
now I can completely relate.
Yeah.
Well, just kind of talking about, you as a doctor and you having your own business, right? How much of the business end do you deal with other than being the doctor? Or does your manager, your office manager, Daniel, does he handle all of that stuff? Or are you looking at bills and are you writing checks? And Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'm still handling the back end. I write all the checks, obviously.
You're doing payroll, you're dealing with.
Well, actually, that's where Daniel's taken a lot of the weight off of me.
Okay.
And Daniel, I would say he probably deals with probably about 70 to 80% of the financial aspect of it when it comes down to dealing with the nitty gritty, like paying the rent, making sure that we have enough money in the bank for the payroll. Where's the money going to come from? And those types of things. That's on me.
Okay.
He's in charge of ordering all of our supplies. He's in charge of making sure that payroll is covered for the period. He's in charge of making sure that we have all of our overhead covered for all the devices that we use.
Who's ordering supplies? He's ordering
supplies. He's the one educating.
There he is. Look at that good looking hunk of man.
Daniel.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
This guy is an extraordinary human being, and you have no idea how much he's meant to me. He's my brother. He's looked out for me, and you can see everything that he's done in his life, and everybody looks up to him, and he does it with a kind heart. I've never seen him mad, not once.
Wow,
and,
that's rare.
Yeah, and
that's rare.
15 years of this relationship, this friendship, and this working relationship. I tell him, you're not my employee, you're my brother, you're my, we've built this together.
Yeah.
And this is as much your dream as it is my dream, Yeah. It says engineered aesthetics on there, not because my name's engineer, it's because it's an homage to my dad, because that's what he was. He was an engineer,
Yeah.
And
that's cool.
And
that's very
just coincidentally happened to be the same thing. So
so that's not made up, then that's your actual last name.
That's my last name. So if you really go back in history, my great grandfather was a textile engineer. My grandfather was. My father was as well. And if you look at India, each state had its own Maharaja or multiple Maharajas. Maharajas were kind of like the king. Raja means king, right? So Maharaja, and so my great grandfather worked for the Maharaja, and he, at that point, the English had colonized India for about 200 years, so English had become integrated into the Indian languages, and each state.
From what I understand, there's like 200 dialects.
Oh yeah,
250 dialects of
16 major languages plus on top of that, and then there's multiple dialects, right?
Yeah.
And each state has its own language, right? So my dad comes from a state called Gujarat, and the state
That's
language.
where one of my best friends is from. So
probably a Patel, right? So,
last name Thacker.
Thacker is okay. So Gandhi, he was from Gujarat.
Okay.
My mom comes from a state called Madhya Pradesh. Madhya meaning middle. And there's Uttar, there's Andhra, and so Madhya Pradesh means is central. It's the center of all of those three states, right?
Okay.
And the main city there was Indore. Indore is a crossroads. So if you look at India and you cross it, Indore is almost in the middle. It's a tiny little village. And that's where my mom came from. Her state language was Hindi. So I was raised speaking Hindi. Mm-hmm. My dad speaks Gujarati. And I can understand Gujarati. I can't speak it.
Okay.
It'd be the difference between Spanish and Italian.
I think I know one word in Gujarati.
Oh, if you say it.
Benchud.
I knew you were going to say it.
My dad would love you for that.
I knew you were going to say it. I'm not going to tell
We used to do that when we were little. We'd be at his house, and his mom always had food on the table. So when we walked in the house, she's all, come sit down. You're eating, right? And we'd always be like, and he'd be like, shut up, man, shut up.
Classic.
We're not going to tell the population what that stands for, but look that one up. I'm sure our Indian folk are going to be like,
Right. So your great grandfather, to the history of the name, the engineer.
Yeah. So he just started signing documents. Hey, because the Maharaja would be like, hey, engineer, come over here, do this. So he started signing his documents, engineer, just like the Bakers, Coopers, Smiths, Fishers, whatever it may be. So it just stuck.
Wow.
And engineer typically.
And how long ago? So that was 50 years ago then, maybe, right?
Probably longer than that.
Yeah.
This is my great-grandfather.
Great-grandfather.
Yeah,
okay.
Great-grandfather.
Okay.
And, and
is there a last name before that name that you're aware of?
I believe it was Mistry, Mistry.
Okay.
But I don't know the legitimacy behind that.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have, I mean, India is different than America where you can, trace somebody's family tree.
Right.
I can't trace my family tree. I mean, it would be practically impossible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got ours back now. And my father's side of the family is just outside of Ukraine.
Okay.
And we've traced it back to about 1840.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah, my sister and my cousins have really spent a lot of time with that and on Ancestry and doing all of those things on Ancestry. They traced that pretty far. My mom's side of the family traced back is just about 100 years.
Wow.
So yeah.
I can go. I mean, as far as pictures are concerned, I've got pictures of my grandfather. Never met him. He died when my dad was like, I want to say somewhere in like 11, 12 or something like that.
Okay.
His mom died when he was like 8. I never met my maternal grandfather. My maternal grandmother I'd actually met in Indore many, many, many years ago on 2 occasions, actually. Because when you're a kid, when you're an Indian kid, you go back to India when you're in the summertime instead of going for like summer breaks and stuff like that. We go back to India and we spend time with the family. So I've probably been to India like 5 times in my life.
Okay. It's awesome.
3 or 4.
There's different classes in India too, if I'm
I mean,
if I remember correctly.
A little bit of that's archaic,
Yeah.
And it doesn't exist to the same level that it used to.
Mm-hmm.
And so, to be quite frank with you, I've lost touch with a lot of that class system aspect of it. But surely there was everything from the untouchables to the Brahmins to there was royalty and there was the people that were doing the servant work, and everybody did it with a smile.
Yeah.
And that's all I can really tell you. I mean,
it's just so interesting, when you talk about that. And I've had some friends tell me they've traveled around the world, as I'm sure you're aware of too, that how much different other countries are than this country.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways better than this country. A lot of ways that, this country, could actually use some advice on. Mm-hmm. And then of course bad ways too.
Yeah.
But I've been encouraged by a lot of people to get outside of this country and see how other countries operate, spend some time out there, and you'll be a different person when you get back.
You will never realize who you are until you travel outside the country.
Yeah.
Because that's when you'll find yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I 2 points I wanted to make. So we, obviously my last name's Engineer. So we come from the carpenter class, the people that build things and construct things, engineer class and stuff like that.
Sure.
But I always, I'm always inspired by, extraordinary figures in life like Siddhartha, who ended up becoming the Buddha. He didn't really realize what he had until he left the kingdom, and he comes down and he saw all this poverty, and that's when he decided he would become the Buddha. But it's a journey. It's not something I can condense into just, a 2-minute conversation, but very inspirational figure for me. So Buddhists are always, inspiring to me. I grew up in a bi-religious household. My dad was Hindu. My mom was Christian. So I grew up in the church, but also respecting Hinduism as well.
Wow.
Because to me, my dad is probably the greatest man that ever lived. And my mom taught me great values as far as, religion and being, trying to
selfless.
Just trying to be a good person, and, Jesus was a pretty extraordinary human being as well.
Without a doubt.
And, so we got Krishna, we got Buddha, we have, Allah, we have, Jesus, we have all these inspirational figures that all kind of recreated, the same message in multiple ways. And what I find extraordinary about my father is his favorite movie is Jesus of Nazareth.
No kidding.
Yeah, he loves that, but he's a Hindu.
I mean, it's great. Jesus has a great story.
He's got a great story. And he says that everything that Jesus said, Christians just said 5,000 years earlier. And so we use that as a message to keep passing along something that's positive to keep us keeping us alive,
within hope
and doing the right thing for each other, which, I go back to my mentor. He's like, I don't care how many talents you have or how fast you can sew or how fast you can do this procedure. All you have to do is do right by others.
Right.
Yeah. We're doing it for the folks.
Love it.
And that's what my mentor taught me, he's got a lot of sayings. I mean, I look up to him, and I mention these all the time. He's like, always have a plan A, B, C, D, and E, but never let plan B be plan A.
Oh, I love that.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's something great.
Go in there with intention.
Yeah.
Make that first plan be your plan.
Yeah.
He taught me, and some of his are pretty funny because, when you're a resident or a fellow and you're training under your mentor and you're sewing and he's sewing and you're just like watching this guy and, he's got these great talents and you want to help. He's like, don't help me. I'm in a hurry.
That's fun. You could take that one. That's you right there.
Yeah,
dude.
Yeah, man.
And I say that to my students from time to time now. I was like, don't help me. I'm in a hurry.
I've had an employee tell me once, and it's probably one of the best lines I've ever heard from an employee. And he was always on time. Always on the job, always working as hard as you can possibly work, and never wanting me to work. Like, get out of the way, Johnny, I got this.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And one day he walked in late. This is the first time I ever seen him late. And he said, "Don't pay the ransom. I escaped." Right.
That's pretty.
Yeah, loved it.
I love that.
So Nitin, you mentioned a lot of quotes that you hold on to, rightfully so. Beautiful quotes. If you could go back and speak to your younger self, what would you say to the younger Nitin? If you could give yourself advice or whatever it is.
Don't chase the money, chase the experience.
Mm-hmm.
The money will come.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's so true.
Yeah.
The money will always come if you do right, if you do a good job, if you work hard. I don't ever think about the money ever.
Yeah.
Ever. I always think about how I'm going to take care of the client.
Yeah.
I would rather lose money and do the job right than make a ton of money and do the job wrong.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, it's your word. That's all you have is your word and what you tell somebody. And if I tell somebody I'm going to do it, it's going to be done.
Yeah. It's paid off in more ways than one, because I consider Ryan one of my best friends.
Yeah.
And it all came out of something like that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Taking care of your bro.
You did the right thing.
We took care of your bro. And look, I didn't just gain Adrian as a brother. I gained you as a brother.
Yeah.
I gained your parents as my parents.
Yeah.
They call me son. They treat me with such kindness and love. And they treat my dad with such kindness and love.
Yeah.
And it was all because of a simple hand procedure that,
Yeah.
You can't beat that.
Yeah. So never chase the money, chase the experience. It's funny. I was actually, I played the drums and I was inspired. And this just recently happened last week. So a guy that inspired me to play the drums is a guy named Carter Johnson. And he was a senior in high school when I was I think I was a freshman. And in the marching band, I was playing the keyboards and I was playing, stuff that wasn't really glamorous or anything like that, but always in the side. I was always like sticking to the drum corps. I was always kind of playing along with them, teaching myself rudiments and like playing on the little drum pads and trying to pretend like, to play, the drums. And then ultimately I convinced my dad to buy me a drum set. But I always used to watch Carter Johnson, play the drums. Like, this guy, he was bad. He was bad. He was awesome.
Yeah.
He was in town last week and he hit me up and he was like, "Hey, Nitin, how you been? We haven't seen each other. We hadn't seen each other since, I want to say, so I graduated high school in 92. He probably graduated in 88 and we hadn't seen each other since then."
Is that when you guys went to Composer or after the Composer Room?
That's where I went after the Composer Room. So I went over into Circa to have dinner with him.
Yes.
And it was pretty funny. And I told you that quote that, don't chase the money, chase the experience. And we were having a conversation about, people being very money minded and very, very like, that's all they want in life. And I was driving down Las Vegas Boulevard right near Fremont Street. And I turned over and I saw this mural of Tony Hsieh, and it said, "Don't chase the money, chase the passion," which is a play on the same thing. And, things in my life have just been recently happening. They're just so coincidental. They're just so electric that I just pinch myself and was like, why are these things happening? Like, why did I just get this beautiful puppy that Daniel actually gifted me, this beautiful puppy that has brought so much light into my life? And, and I've got these two beautiful dogs. I've got a beautiful house. I've got a beautiful staff. I've got beautiful friends, and if you chase the experience, it's everything.
It's always a win.
It's always a win. I mean, I could be poor. I could be in a tent. We went up to Mount Charleston. We did a team retreat last weekend. And we all we're all dog people in the office, and like Daniel has 5 dogs.
Wow.
And Cameron, who's our patient care coordinator, has a couple of dogs. And then Daniel's sister, twin sister.
That's a lot of responsibility.
A lot of responsibility. Daniel's twin sister, her dog is my dog's sister, the same litter, right?
Okay.
So there's Luna and mine's Lana, right? And so we're all up there and we're just hiking through the woods. And I just never felt so much peace. I didn't have to talk to anybody about anything. We're just like hiking through the woods and watching these little packs of shepherds. And there's a Belgian Malinois, there's a German Shepherd, and that to me is the experience.
Oh yeah,
that's priceless.
Yeah, man.
And we're just like cooking hot dogs and just sitting in like chairs and not worried about what we're wearing
And then you came to rock out with Otherwise.
And then I came to rock out with you guys right thereafter, right? I drove down to come to that show thereafter. Yeah. That was an extraordinary weekend.
Yeah, it was good.
Well, I've not had money. I've had money, and it never changed my happiness level. I can still look back 25 years ago, when I first met my wife and we didn't have a pot to piss in, and we were just as happy then as we are today. It doesn't change anything. It may make things a little bit easier.
Yeah.
Things are a little bit easier because you don't have to worry about, the financial aspects of things, but it doesn't make me any happier at all.
It's funny that you bring that up because I was doing really well in my hand practice. I was, on the rise, and then I got the call to come back and do fellowship. And I took a 90%.
I was going to say, because you had to, you
took a 90%.
You let go of your income at that point.
Everything.
Yeah.
And I was living off of savings. I was living off of some income that was coming in from some of the personal injury stuff or the insurance reimbursements for the work that I'd done as a hand surgeon. But that goes quickly. That drains after the first year.
Especially when you get used to a certain lifestyle, right?
Absolutely.
Even if you cut back, there's still, there's a certain particular lifestyle that you have to live or want to live or you're accustomed to or used to, right? Like you want to go have that steak dinner, that you're used to having.
Yeah. Absolutely. So when I came back, I had to start from scratch again. And I'm thinking to myself, what did I do?
Yeah.
And now, rebranding yourself as a plastic surgeon and a hand surgeon, and the patients are coming in and you're sweating month to month to month to month. I got payroll. Payroll never came as so fast.
Oh yeah.
Every 2 weeks I'm like, oh my God, I got to make sure I got this much money. And they,
I used to think about those things, because people would ask me, well, I started my business and it just didn't work out. It failed. And, it was just so hard. I'm like, this shit ain't easy. It is not easy to run a business, and especially to restart a business. I mean, the chances are 50-50, right. 70%, 80% of companies don't last 5 years.
Yeah.
So to restart it, that's a lot of courage to go and say, hey, I'm going to jump on this. But it all comes back to what you were saying before. The experience is more important.
Yeah, it's about the passion.
Yeah.
And surrounding yourself by really, really good people and be the dumbest person in the room. Always be.
That's my motto, man. I want to be the dumbest person in the room
dumbest person
every day.
in the room.
I'm here today.
Unfortunately, guys,
I'm here today doing that right now.
I take that one. I take the cake on that one, boys.
No, be the dumbest person in the room, because that's where you're going to learn.
That's right. That's where you learn.
And it's a cliche. I know, you hear it from Tony Robbins, you hear it from all these people, but there's truth to it. Be the dumbest person in the room. Don't be the one that has the ego. Don't be, murder the ego.
Yeah.
Be the person that, you can learn from other people. I'd rather, remember, 2 ears, 1 mouth.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, I've definitely, we could end right there. That's so amazing. But I've definitely maturing in the business, and with with the band, it was like it was our own business, but then we gave it all away to where it wasn't our business anymore, but it was our business. It's such a strange, it's like, it's our business, but you own someone else owns all our products, right. But it's still our business. It's just
you've come full circle on that. Now you're doing it the right way, right? Yeah. Now you can rebuild it, and it's whatever you build, you're not giving away to somebody else, right? Whatever you build is yours now. Yeah. And that's the greatest thing that you guys could have possibly done. And I know we talked about it over the years, how do we get out of this? How do we get out of this? And but it's like, but it's needed. We need it because we got to release the singles, and we got to, we have to produce the music, and we got to pay somebody to produce the music. Yeah. But now you guys are able to do that on your own through contractual situations and other things. And so you're going to be better off. The next 10 years are going to be better than the last 20.
Yeah. I definitely, I love that saying, 2 ears, 1 mouth. I look back a lot with, I had a lot of ego, my younger years, and still to this day, I'm sure some ego is great, you got to have confidence in what you believe in. And especially in this day and age where everything can be so confusing, you really got to stand strong in your own 2 feet. Mm-hmm. But I do retrospectively, I think, but man, I could have probably kept my mouth shut, or just led by example rather than, words. Yeah. And that's something that you guys have done so well in your lives and your careers that I definitely look up to.
Oh, don't get me wrong. I've especially when you come straight out of residency or fellowship, you think you're invincible. You don't murder your ego until you have your first complication. Then you're like, oh, no. Yeah. Things aren't perfect. And then you're having to deal with that complication, because if you don't have a complication, you haven't done enough operations.
Yeah.
There's truth to that. And when you first have to deal with that patient that had, a difficult outcome or whatever, it may not have even been your fault. It's just the way their skin healed or their tissue healed, or it was too late till you got to an operation, or, whatever it may be. Once you have to deal with that, that's when you get humbled.
Yeah.
And then you're like, okay, now it just got real. Yeah. Life just got real. Mm-hmm. And then once you level out, just like anything, once the dust settles and now you're on a level playing field, now you get to practice. It's called a practice for a reason, right? Now you're practicing medicine, and you're learning from each one of these lessons, just like you, I'm sure you go out and like, man, I wish I could have hit that chord just a little bit better. Or if I could have hit that solo just a little bit better, just like the drums, me, I remember, playing in bands and being like, man, I could have just, I practiced that so much. Yeah. And then I didn't hit it when I needed to hit it. And that was the moment,
So I remember, and this was in my probably mid to late 20s. We had just had the company and started the company. It'd only been a couple of years, maybe 5 years old. And I remember, in a meeting and somebody had said something that I didn't like, and I remember just slamming my hand down on the table, and it's like, because I'm the fucking boss. That's why.
Oh, man.
Right. And I went to bed that night and thought about it, and I'm like, I don't want to be that guy.
You don't want to be.
I don't want to be that guy. I want to be the guy that's, like, how can I help my employees become better people? How can I make my employees become more successful at what they do? And I've always talked to my employees when we'll have deep conversations, and I just tell them, I want you to leave this place. I want you to get to a point to where this place, you've outgrown this place and you've got to a better place. And I can tell you that, we've had at least 6 guys that to this day own their own company now that used to work here.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And that's when I see that the company's, made a success out of itself. When it can see all of these people that have left this company and gone on to be something bigger. Super important.
I've got a great story about that. And I don't know if we should end on this or not, but my medical assistant, not Daniel's obviously our office manager, but by my right-hand woman in my office is a girl named Tamara Kabani, and she Syrian refugee, came to the United States.
Wow.
Escaped the civil war in Syria, came here with her sister. His sister also works in my office. These 2 ladies are so loyal to me and so fantastic. And Sabrina, the older sister, acted almost like a mother figure to Tamara. Tamara was so driven. She graduated high school at 15.
Wow.
Graduated college at 19. Ended up teaching biology at UNLV. There she is. Fantastic.
Wow.
Wonderful human being. Was so nervous about wanting to get into medical school. She just got into medical school.
Wow.
At 21. Wow. That's a year before I got into medical school.
Yeah.
Brilliant human being. And I'm so proud of her. And that's exactly what you just said. You want the best. As I'm losing her.
Yeah.
But I'm winning too.
Yeah.
Because we've put somebody beautiful into the world of medicine that we need, and I'm proud of her.
That's amazing.
That's fantastic.
And we're all going to Reno for her white coat ceremony in August. It's
fantastic. So she's going to Reno.
UNR? Yeah.
UNR. Yeah.
She got in, and
fantastic.
I remember when she told us how fantastic we felt. And her dad, I'm like her uncle.
Yeah.
I'm like the uncool, cool uncle.
Yeah.
And her dad and she came to my 50th birthday party.
Yeah.
And I just hugged him so hard. I told him, I feel like you're my brother because of this extraordinary experience. And it brings a tear to my eye because of how extraordinary she is and what she's done. And
it's amazing.
And what she's done for our community.
Well, that just kind of reflects what, the type of practice and community within the business, the opportunities that you've given them, and that just reflects the type of person you are. And I tell you that a lot, you're a pillar, you're a beacon of light in the community, and you're just,
that's what I love about these guys is they always have like the greatest friends too, right? Adrian and Ryan always have the greatest friends, and we end up sitting up and talking till 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning when we all hang out, because they just have the greatest and most interesting friends. And you're definitely one of those guys.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, as are you, sir. Yeah, you're top dog, sir.
No,
well, thanks for that.
Ryan. I agree with you. And, anyone that I've ever met through Ryan has become a great friend of mine too. And, what your family has done for me, what you've done for me, what Adrian's done for me. We're dying to get Adrian back here to Las Vegas. And
we are.
I'm trying to figure out an opportunity for Katie and the full meal deal.
Yeah, I hope all that can come to fruition. I know Adrian had mentioned it too. Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope that happens.
Yeah,
for sure. We need him back here.
Yeah. But, one thing that does, that's true with all of our friends, whether it's mentally, business, spiritually, like all of us are always striving for more, none of we're just like,
we ain't done yet.
We ain't done yet. We're there's more, and I think that's what's we're very lucky to have our friends and now have this, I'll say it every time. Like we're lucky to be able to sit here. We talked about this for a long time, and now this is just another art form in itself. Of it's therapy to just sit. It's amazing for us to galvanize these friendships of ours, and then who knows if someone listens to this and just realizes that there's real people out there that have worked hard and that are interesting and don't give up and they stay positive,
Well, even if we run into 50 subscribers and that's all we get to, there's going to be one of those subscribers that just listened to something that Nitin said that changed somebody's life. And that was well worth it at all.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. I mean, it all comes from my mentors. I didn't come up with any of this, it all came from my mentors.
And that's what we do, right? Is we learn from others and then we transfer that knowledge to other people.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like I took the riff of Soldiers from Last of the Mohicans.
No kidding, huh? I did not know that. I'm learning something new every day about this guy too.
I'm going to tell you a cool story about the Last of the Mohicans. So
okay.
I applied to medical school in my sophomore year. So I got in a year earlier than I was, I didn't even have to take the MCAT, right? And the application for that, I was actually on spring break, and we used to do these things called alternative spring break. So instead of going to like Florida or something like that, we would like go to different locations and do a little community service and then come back, celebrate and all that kind of stuff. So that year we went to Charleston right after the hurricane. So we were rebuilding houses, and at night I was working on my application. And I was having so much fun with my friends. I just kept putting the application off and putting the application off, putting the application off. Got back to school, and that night I was like, shit, the application's due the next day. I put on the soundtrack to Last of the Mohicans on repeat. My roommate is asleep. Yeah, exactly. He's asleep, and I'm playing this soundtrack over and over again as I'm vigorously trying to fill out this application. And I got it done. It was due at 9 a.m. And I got done with it at 7 a.m. I ran it over to the med school, turned it in, and then I got an interview. I was like, you got to be kidding me. And then I got in. Yeah. And I felt just like Tamara did when she told me a couple of weeks ago. And I was like, I know what that feels like.
Yeah.
30 years ago.
Yeah. Right. Is there really a song on the Last of the Mohicans that we would know?
It's the theme.
The main theme.
And dude, it's different notes, and I was playing different chords, but I'm like, that rhythm that I felt in that theme song, the Last of the Mohicans,
almost has a chant to
it. Is this tribal? That is Soldiers. Yeah. It's that is such different.
It's almost like a march, right? Yeah.
Dude. Yeah. That's how I'm like, Corky, can you play like a snare beat, bro? And we're like, oh, tribal. He's a rock and roll glory, like war. Come on, like this is we're fighting for, even in the prayer, to fight for a better life, and that's how we've always felt about it. But yeah. But Soldiers,
that is so cool.
The riff that I wrote when I was 17 years old is inspired by The Last of the Mohicans,
which is also one of the best books ever written. James Fenimore Cooper, Last of the Mohicans. If you've ever the movie is great. The book is.
I'm going to pick it up.
You got to pick it up.
I'm going to pick it up.
Classic.
I've seen the movie, but never read the book.
Classic. So. And, Daniel Day-Lewis in that movie just crushed it.
Incredible actor.
Yeah, I think he's my favorite actor. Well, now he's essentially retired, but yeah, amazing.
And I consider my dad and me to be the last of the Mohicans of the Engineer family in that sense, because it's just me and him left. At the end of the movie, you see the two of them sitting on that mountain, and it's like talking about the last of the Mohicans. And
I'm gonna rewatch that movie tonight.
I know, now I gotta watch it again.
Such a good movie.
I love great movies.
I'm glad you brought
that. They just
up.
Don't make that
that anymore. I learned something about.
Dude, that's the point of this.
I learned something about you every day too.
Yeah, we get to sit down, and this is it. This is what we ain't done yet. We ain't done learning about each other. We ain't done living, and we ain't done fighting for what we love. And it's been a pleasure. The 3-piece suits you got, the episode 3, it all comes together. It's like it's amazing that you've been able to come and sit with us, and that we've become so close from such a crazy experience where you showed how big of a heart you have. And, that's so much with John, we that'll be saved for another beer. And we've told you many times before how much this man's helped my brother and I and the band that you love, like far so much more than anybody. We met John I was telling Jess this morning that the last weekend that I saw my cousin was the first weekend that I met John.
Wow.
So I don't know. The angels in life just had this. It's like a train station, and that like one train going, one train coming, and our family. Not to go on because I feel we close it out, but there's something with trains coming up in my life, and
I mean, you got an engineer on board.
Yeah, dude. Both of our mom's side, my grandfather was he ran a railroad. My grandmother was one of the first women doctors in the area. Oh. Yeah, on the railroad. And then my blue-eyed, blonde-haired Irish grandfather came on the railroad to the area and met my grandmother on my mom's side, or excuse me, on my dad's side. So there's this.
The train brought you to life.
And then what is Vegas? And I'm like, man, there's something about trains coming. So, it's just cool that we're running this rock and roll train together. I love it.
Agreed on that, man.
So cool.
Well, thanks so much, Nitin,
thank you for coming
down and chatting with us, man. I
appreciate that.
And make sure to come back too.
Of course.
I'm
Anytime.
sure we still got a ton of interesting stories.
We'll definitely have another one. But before we go, we've got engineered aesthetic. We've got engineered photography. We've got what is the name of your flower company?
Oh, Cushberry Farms.
So we've got Cushberry Farms. Wow. What's the name of the resort?
The island
that you're opening?
Yeah, Tesoro Resort. Okay. Yeah.
So
I mean, I've got my hands in a few things here, and I can't take credit for any of them except for the fact that I'm surrounded by good people that have Joe Tesorio, Matthew Massey, Matt Massey, who's our common good friend.
Oh yeah,
he helped us with that. As far as Cushberry Farms, we got Tyler Morgan and Dallas Horton who've helped us with that.
Got a lot of things
obviously
going.
Photography is, I didn't realize we're both Canon guys, so that's fantastic.
I'm about to join the Canon Club. Tomorrow,
you're about to.
So.
And I mean, and let's not take away from your sunlight too. But what you did this weekend was fantastic for the veterans.
Oh yeah, and you guys are two of the biggest Life by Music supporters ever.
I mean, that's extraordinary.
So
I think they need to.
It's so inspiring to watch those guys. And what was so crazy to me is that how great of a teacher he is. My wife is a teacher. My wife's a special ed teacher. My oldest daughter is a special ed teacher, but teaches second grade. And now my youngest daughter is also a teacher. And watching him out there teach too,
it's amazing.
It's just like, and within an hour, these guys are playing the song.
Yeah. We played Free Fallin', Tom Petty.
I know, I saw that.
We got it going, dude.
Oh, it was so good.
And then they all got guitar. All the military got guitars.
I was so proud to just be there and be a part of it and watch what happened. I just felt just so much pride to see that happen.
Oh, I wanted to be there so badly.
Good job, man.
And when Adrian handed that guitar out to the security guys,
oh, dude,
that was a pretty emotional.
There was a leftover guitar, and it's like and there was more in the back, but Adrian just came around that front, and everybody had already had one, and he's like, "Who wants one?"
You didn't see it, but the security guard at 29 Palms when we played, we were leaving.
No, we recorded that.
Oh, yeah, you came in.
We recorded it, bro.
The security guard we handed it to at the end of the night, everybody's gone. Stage is practically broken down. He was walking. I could see him. I was sitting in the truck ready to leave, and he walked over to another security guard, and I could see him pulling the guitar out of the case, and they're just standing there. And I'm like, fuck, dude, I'm like so tired. And I'm like ready to go back to the hotel, and I'm just watching this happen from up. They were far down the hill. I'm like, dude, I got to go up to him right now. I'm like, come on, Steele, grab the camera, dude. This is going to be awesome. And
Steele is just
and we walked up. We walked up to him, and they were covered by. They couldn't see me, and then I just like popped around the corner. I'm like, hey man, what's up, dude? Like, you gonna practice on that thing or what? I'm like, let me show you a chord real quick, and I popped him. I showed him a quick chord. I'm like, you promise you're gonna practice? He's like, I swear. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Like, okay,
That's
man.
cool, man.
Yeah, you'll see that in the
We got some
in the
good footage
recap
coming.
video
Yeah.
that we're building for
Yeah.
Life by Music.
Were you there filming the whole thing?
I was there filming the whole thing, mainly with our videographer, Steele, though. Steele Rutherford is one of the most incredible videographers I've ever met.
And you know what? He's actually, he considers himself a cinematographer.
Yeah. And that's exactly what he
And
is.
that's what
I mean,
he is.
everything that he pushes out of that camera, when you look at it from the other side, it feels like you're watching one of the most incredible movies.
That's sick.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
so great.
It was so cool to get everything to come together like that. Everyone at 29 Palms, Pro Sports MVP, a guy named David Sanchez. I mean,
David Sanchez is one of the coolest cats around too. I mean, we showed up to the place and we came in a day earlier, and we were going to pay for the rooms for a day earlier because we wanted to come in and teach the Marines in the morning. So it's like, hey, we won't make it in time, even getting up at 4:00 in the morning, especially knowing rock stars.
Sure.
Right. So it's like, we're leaving Thursday. And we'll pick up the rooms, but we got there and no sooner were we pulling up, but David's like, hey man, I got the rooms. I already paid for the rooms for you. And I'm like, David, you didn't have to do that, man. He's all, no, man, it's the little things. It's the little things.
Yeah.
That's,
you know.
So he, and we brought this concept together. He helped facilitate it, make it happen. You know, now it's like, we're going to do it in other bases.
Yeah.
We're going to do it in other places. It's already happening.
It has to be. It has
It's
to
gotta,
happen.
you know,
It
we'll
was
fight
so
for it.
incredible. And everybody on the base, I mean, they were just so inspired
The
by
energy
it.
was
I talked to Jen from the USO,
Mhm.
and she walks up and she's watching the band practice, and she's like, oh, they sound so incredible. And I'm like, well, you know, I mean, we're still trying to get the sound dialed in right now. And she's all, no, they sound really great. So it doesn't matter. And I understand how all this stuff works. And I'm like, that's great, Jen. I was like, well, you know, I don't know if you heard, but earlier, and she's all, oh, them teaching the Marines? Yes, we did hear. Matter of fact, people were posting about it on our Facebook page.
yeah.
And I'm like, oh,
really cool.
that's incredible. And she's all, where can I get some more information about this? And I'm like, the tent is right over here. We have pamphlets over there, and we'd love to come and talk to you later on about it. So, and David is, I spoke with David later after that, and he's all, I'll definitely get in connection with Jan, and let's do this. Let's make something bigger.
It was,
out of
man,
this.
I wish
it
I
was a
could've
monumental
So-
show and experience, and we'll definitely update this show with the link to the video.
Yeah.
Once we have it ready, it will
Definitely.
be in the subject matter, or in the about me of the video. But it was just
It was,
dream.
it was epic. It was one of those epic times, man, that I remember. You know, and there's a lot of epic times that we had hanging out doing shows, Aftershock, Big Festival,
huge.
stealing golf carts, and doing all of that stuff. But this was
Borrowing.
like the top of the list, man. It just really was.
It was
Borrowing, yes, borrowing. Did I say that? Borrowing.
Yeah. So again, man, guys, thank you so much for being my friend, being my brother's friend, being our brothers. Honestly,
Of course.
Ditto, brother.
Yeah.
And likewise, thank you for bringing me into the family, man.
we ain't done yet.
We ain't
Yeah.
done yet.
Yeah, man.
See you on
Appreciate
the next
it.
rip.
Thanks, brother.
Appreciate you, man.
Thanks, Sean.
Yeah.
Appreciate it, man. Thanks
Hell
for having me here.
Hell yeah.
Alex, thank you, man.
Thanks again, Alex. Appreciate you, man.
What?
They might be sleeping back there. It is late. Raj, are you awake?
Roger, the Raja.